Chapter 1455. More and more spiritual chi and the light of the great path fell into the samsara of life and death. The whirlpool formed by the samsara of life and death also rolled back towards the center. The light in the center of the whirlpool was still extremely dim, but the strong sense of power contained within it was increasingly profound and exuberant. Where the dim light shrouded, everything in the void suddenly fell into a state of stagnation, as if returning to an eternal land of death. But within it there seemed to be a faint vitality surging, forming a never-ending samsara of life and death. The concept of power was beyond profound. The concept was similar to that of the king of the underworld's way of life and death, but not completely the same. The concept of power of the Book of Life and Death was also different. It was grander, vaster, and more complete. When Shi Tianhao saw this scene, he suddenly grinned. He opened his palm, and in the center of his palm, the runes that were engraved were shining brightly. Extending his hand, Shi Tianhao aimed the runes on his palm at the black and white whirlpool that was spewing dim light. Then, a ray of light shot out from the runes and fell into the center of the whirlpool. The entire samsara of life and death seemed to shake at this moment. Then, the light in the whirlpool became even thicker. It was drawn by the ray of light that was connected to the runes on Shi Tianhao's palm, and the whole thing rose from the whirlpool. Then, the black and white whirlpool gradually shrank until it was completely enveloped by the dim light. It was as if one was in a cloud and could not see clearly. And in the dim light, suddenly, a huge shadow appeared. As the radiance spread out, it turned out to be a massive city. It didn't seem to be as large as the Sky City, but the power and aura it contained were even more majestic and profound than the Sky City before them. It was an indescribable city. The bricks were neither black nor white, and it looked like it was built from half a mountain peak. The city was like a world of its own. At the foot of the mountain city, a dim yellow river flowed around the mountain city. The water was vast and mighty, but it was silent. It was the Yellow Springs River of Forgetfulness. This long river flowed into the mountain city, and across the city, there was a dark green stone bridge that crossed the long Yellow Springs River. On the city walls, there was a door that also connected the inside and outside of the city. But outside and inside the door were two completely different worlds. Outside the gate, on the mountain rocks, a winding and rugged path extended down the mountain. At the center of the city stood a huge black palace. It was grand, solemn, and dignified. The people in the city could not help but want to worship it. Shi Tianhao smiled and jumped off the city wall of Sky Castle. He landed directly in the silent and deathly silent city in front of him. He walked all the way to the Black Palace and pushed the door open. Walking into the hall, Shi Tianhao saw two people standing opposite each other in the center of the hall. One of them was a white-haired young man with a cold expression. It was Wang Lin. The person opposite Wang Lin was the king of the underworld. At this moment, the king of the underworld was sizing Wang Lin up with a strange look in his eyes, but he did not say a word. And in Wang Lin's palm was an ancient scroll. It looked like the Book of Life and Death that had originally belonged to the king of the underworld. The torn Book of Life and Death seemed to be completely undamaged at this moment. It had been restored to its original state. However, with a glance, Shi Tianhao knew that this Book of Life and Death was different from before. It was no longer the creation magic treasure of the past, but the manifestation of its power and aura. Wang Lin turned to look at Shi Tianhao and said with a smile, "I'm back." Shi Tianhao came to his side and lightly punched Wang Lin's shoulder with his fist. He smiled and said, "You're faster than I expected." Hearing his words, the strange look in the king of the underworld's eyes became even more intense. He shook his head and said, "He killed all of his previous and future lives, leaving only one person in this life. He has no ties or entanglements, and he kills everyone he sees. Naturally, he's fast." Shi Tianhao was slightly startled when he heard that. He glanced at Wang Lin and could not help but laugh. "Third senior brother, "You're still the same." Wang Lin smiled and shook his head. Then, he turned his gaze back to the king of the underworld and said calmly, "It's time for you to end your days." He raised his palm, and the ancient scroll in his hand turned into rays of light that pierced through the roof of the hall and charged into the sky. Then, it scattered and turned into specks of light that fell down and covered the entire city. The majestic city shook, and the majestic power and aura became even greater and more powerful. The aura that leaked out interwove in the sky, and it actually vaguely looked like the cycle of life and death. All the worlds in the heavens seemed to be attracted and thrown into it. Only this majestic city stood between life and death, unmoving and unshakable. On a stone wall in the mountain city, two huge words gradually appeared. They seemed to be engraved in time and space, in the world, and in the cycle of reincarnation. Fengdu. In the spirit sea, thousands of rays of light of the great Tao flashed together. Two streams of light, one black and one white, wrapped around Fengdu City like chains. A powerful aura, like that of a world of creation, burst forth from within, showing the extreme of the great Tao of life and death. In the void, the speed of the great heavenly wheel's rotation seemed to slow down, and the light became more mysterious and thick. It shone brightly with Fengdu City, feeling the birth of a new comrade. In Emperor Yan's hall in Fengdu City, as the scroll in Wang Lin's hand disappeared, Fengdu City was officially settled. The body of the king of the underworld began to gradually turn into dust and dissipate. At this moment, his expression became calm. He had used the method of entering reincarnation to break out, but still failed. This white-haired youth in front of him dared to give up a stable future to enter reincarnation to fight to the death with him. This battle had not been in vain. The king of the underworld looked calmly at Wang Lin. "I was once in control of reincarnation, and determined the fate of life and death. I have many regrets, but at this point, there is no point in saying more." It was a pity that even though he had ascended to the position of human emperor, he could not truly rule over the world and rule over the world. It was a pity that the Haotian mirror, once the strongest treasure in the heaven primordial great world, had never fallen into his control, even when he was only one step away from it. It was a pity that he had painstakingly built up from ancient times until recently, but he was still not the main character of this era. It was a pity that he had dominated the world since ancient times. Yan Xinghe, Xia Fangyu, Blood River Taoist, and the others were all top figures of the immortal Tao, but they had all fallen at his hands. But he had ultimately fallen at the hands of a junior. He had been killed in the reincarnation of life and death, and handed over his position as the master of life and death to the person who had killed him. The king of the underworld would not be hypocritical and think that this was a worthy death. To him, only victory, only killing his opponent, and his own survival would be a satisfactory result. As the loser, as someone else's background and stepping stone, no matter what, it was a pity and unwillingness. But since things had already come to this, the king of the underworld would not lose his mind. He was calm at the moment, and only looked at Wang Lin silently. He looked around Fengdu City and said, "The path you walk is the same as mine, and now, you have the hope of walking further than me. I just don't know how many people will allow you to continue walking like this." Wang Lin said indifferently, "Is there any meaning in caring about this now?" The king of the underworld sighed and laughed. "It's a pity that I will not be able to see the results." As he laughed, his figure completely disappeared from the world, turning into dust and no longer existing. The king of the underworld Taoist Xiandu, who had left a strong mark in the ancient era and was also one of the top cultivators among the generations of human emperors, had once again set off huge waves in the netherworld sea and the war between the two realms after experiencing rebirth in the present era. He had almost influenced the course of the war between the two realms and caused the Haotian mirror to change owners. As a cultivator with the deepest understanding of the reincarnation of life and death in the history of the human cultivation world in the Divine Land, he had been killed in the reincarnation cycle today. His life had finally come to an end, and he had fallen in the Spirit Sea, one of the 7 seas of Tianyuan. Seeing the king of the underworld die completely, Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao did not say anything. Today they had personally buried an epic legend, and at this moment, both of them felt the world of the Spirit Sea become increasingly turbulent. The two of them looked at each other and left Fengdu City together. Looking into the distance, they saw that the gray independent realm on the horizon was constantly twisting and shaking. Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao's eyes lit up. "It's the crack of the Dead Sea," Masters sighed. At this moment, the fluctuations of the Spirit Sea became chaotic and intense again, and the light of the great Tao kept breaking in the void. The Spirit Sea was in chaos, and from the outside, the Spirit Sea, which looked like a flat surface, was constantly twisting and twitching, like a piece of paper being forcefully rubbed. For a moment, those who were in it had a feeling that they could be expelled by the Spirit Sea at any time, or bear the huge destructive power of the violent Spirit Sea. In the vast 1,000 domains, which were closely connected to the Spirit Sea, they could also clearly feel the huge changes in the Spirit Sea. On the vast land of infinite wilderness, Xian Li's eyes were fixed on the faintly discernible streams of light in the sky. Beside her, Luo Qingwu, Zhou Yunsong, and the other disciples of Xianmen Tianzong, who had just arrived, also looked up at the sky, paying close attention to the changes. On White Cloud Mountain in the Divine Land, Kuang Heng and the others were also sitting cross-legged, watching the void above their head. They had already noticed that the escaping Taoist Tianxing was blocked by the cultivators of Xianmen Tianzong, but at this moment, they were not in the mood to find trouble with Taoist Tianxing. Instead, they were all focused on the changes in the Spirit Sea. Luo Qingwu's true self, Chu Yang, Tang Jun, and the others also sensed the changes in the heaven and earth. However, they were still focused on the matter at hand. Their attacks were relentless, pressing down on Tianxing Taoist. Taoist Tianxing's expression was extremely solemn as he dealt with the 3 Dharma treasures, the 9 Heaven Sword, Ding of Shenzhou, and the 9 Sun Brilliant Pearl. His heart suddenly tightened, and he turned to look, only to see that the void had suddenly cracked. It did not originate from the turbulent Spirit Sea, but from somewhere else. Thousands of calamities and tribulations surged out, and a handsome young man appeared. Seeing this young man, Taoist Tianxing sighed softly, and his heart sank. Chapter 1456. Endless natural disasters and earthly tribulations gushed out from the crack in the void. It was as if doomsday had come to pass in front of everyone. But looking through the crack in the void, they could see that the world on the other side was chaotic, but everything seemed to have fallen into a state of stillness. It was extremely strange. The nether sea disasters that gushed out of the crack seemed to be orderly, forming a path that extended in front of Tianxing Taoist and the others. It was as if the doomsday disasters that could destroy the world were just ordinary flowing water and clouds. It was a scene that defied common sense. It seemed absurd and contradictory, but it was also shocking and disturbing. The handsome young man in front of everyone was naturally the eldest disciple of Lin Feng, the master of the Celestial Gate, Emperor Yen, Xiao Yen. Xiao Yen stepped out of the crack in the nether sea. His eyes fell on Tianxing Taoist, and he raised his eyebrows slightly. "This is the second time we've fought. It's the first time we've met." Tianxing Taoist looked at Xiao Yen with a rare wry smile on his face. Before, he had once exchanged blows with Xiao Yen through the air, cutting off the clues left behind because of Tang Wenhua. But today he still has to fight with Xiao Yen again. Xiao Yen didn't say much to him. He stretched out his palm. As he moved, raging flames burned around him. His body gradually grew taller and turned into a 9-zhang tall flame god, standing in the void. A dark red light surged in Xiao Yan's eyes. It was cold and fierce, raging and oppressive. Behind him, thousands of disasters and tribulations rushed out of the crack in the nether sea. Dark evil flame, mysterious sky calamity flame, blood river true water, 9 nether evil wind, infinite evil wind, yellow spring true water, dark destruction chi, demon dream charming stone, fierce eyes ghost fire, floating thunder water. Countless evil forces gathered in front of Xiao Yan's palm. There seemed to be a spot of light in the void, like a spark that hadn't been completely extinguished yet. It flashed and flashed, repeating the process. Thousands of disasters gathered at that point, displaying the creation of the great Tao. It was Xiao Yan's magic, Tao annihilation rebirth. A terrifying power burst out in an instant, striking at Tianqing Taoist. The power was concentrated at one point, not causing any harm to the other existences in the surroundings. All of it was aimed at Tianqing Taoist. Tao annihilation and Tao annihilation seemed endless. Even the mysterious great void light around Tianqing Taoist's body was being shaken off by the baptism. The indescribable and unfathomable mysterious light kept losing its mysteries, becoming shiny and ordinary. Then, it completely collapsed and disappeared. Seeing this, the bitter smile on Tianqing Taoist's face deepened. The netherworld sea is going to have a new master? He looked up to the sky and let out a long sigh. His body swayed slightly, and the magic power around his body became dimmer and dimmer. However, a light shadow that was almost identical to him appeared again. This light figure exploded and turned into streams of flowing light, sweeping up the black and white auspicious clouds around Tianqing Taoist's body and spreading out in all directions, wanting to temporarily resist Xiao Yan's spell. At the same time, Tianqing Taoist waved his hand and a door of light appeared in the void. Without hesitation, he retreated into the door and tried to escape. However, under the impact of Xiao Yan's horrifying magic, the golden light and the black and white clouds were all destroyed. The door of light that led to the unknown also collapsed and closed. Tianqing Taoist was forced out of the door. He used the escape art of emptiness circulation, but he found that the time and space he was in seemed to be completely frozen, then disintegrated and turned into nothingness. Tianqing Taoist took a deep breath and used the boundless transformation art. His body suddenly stepped into an existence between reality and illusion, as if he was no longer in this world. In the boundless illusion realm, the existences in the real world could no longer contact him. However, as Xiao Yan sneered, Tianqing Taoist felt his body being oppressed again. Even in the illusory world, he couldn't avoid Xiao Yan's Tao annihilation rebirth art. Under this art, regardless of reality or illusion, everything was destroyed. Everything ceased to exist and was crushed into pieces by the powerful force generated by the cycle of life and death of the great Tao. Tianqing Taoist shook his head and retreated from the boundless illusion realm, once again using the great void mystic light. He performed an incantation gesture and sat cross-legged on the spot. Streams of mysterious light flowed around him, gradually turning into something like the 9 heavens of the great void mystic light, shrouding him within. However, under the effect of Xiao Yan's magic, even if Tianqing Taoist focused on defense, the 9 heavens of the great void mystic light continued to collapse. Luo Qingwu, Chu Yang, and Tang Jun all came to the side of Xiao Yan. Silently, they watched the battle between Xiao Yan and Tianqing Taoist. Tang Jun looked at Tianqing Taoist calmly, without any sadness or joy on his face. Perhaps it was a coincidence, or perhaps he sensed something, but Tianqing Taoist also looked at Tang Jun, and their eyes met in the air. Tianqing Taoist looked at Tang Jun with an emotionless look, just like before. There was no awkwardness, no pleading, and no anger. He didn't try to move Tang Jun to help him out of his predicament. Tang Jun's gaze towards him was also calm, without the slightest ripple. This pair of father and son, who couldn't be considered father and son, looked at each other calmly. Tianqing Taoist retracted his gaze and focused on dealing with Xiao Yan's attack again. Unfortunately, It was like facing a sandcastle with raging waves beating on the shore. One wave and it would be smashed into pieces. Chu Yang was also sitting cross-legged. Above his head, a 9-foot-long sword was suspended in the air. Rays of sword light shone brightly, covering the sky and earth. There seemed to be countless illusory figures in the sky, manifesting countless worlds and countless principles. It was as if the heavens had descended and blessed the blade of the sword. As the rays of sword light spread out, each ray of sword light seemed to manifest a mysterious principle of heaven and earth, connecting the 9 heavens and 10 earths, and extending infinitely. The aura of power in the long sword became increasingly sharp and majestic. It hung above Chu Yang's head, like a creation world. This was the ancient heavenly gate inheritance, the creation treasure that Chu Yang had finally mastered, the 9th heaven sword. After the intense battle with Tianxing Daoist and the sharpening of the 9 skies of the Taishu, this divine sword had finally reached the creation realm. Another top-notch divine sword had been added to the great Tianyuan world's swordsmanship treasure. On the side, Ding of Shenzhou and the brilliant pearl of the 9 Yang trembled slightly, feeling the rebirth of another of their kind. As the 9th heaven sword vibrated, the sound of the sword whistled up to the 9 heavens and down to the earth, as if it wanted to cut through the blue skies and split open the yellow springs. Across the entire divine land, all the swordsmanship cultivators heard the loud sword hum at this moment. They felt the constant vibration of the great Tao of heaven and earth, and their minds were stirred. Tens of thousands of swords in the world, regardless of whether they were ordinary weapons or Dharma treasures of cultivators, were all unsheathed at this moment and vibrated slightly in the air. It was not the fear of facing the Emperor of Swords like the immortal heaven sword of the past, but the pure feeling of the other party's power, as if one was looking up at the sky and felt a sense of awe. Xian Longxing and Sword Venerable Tiangang, who were still in the vast Tianhuang continent, felt something at this moment. Although they still could not see, they looked in the direction of Chu Yang and the 9th heaven sword through the layers of void. Xian Longxing's heaven-opening sword seemed to be shaken as well, emitting a clear sword hum that vaguely resonated with the 9th heaven sword's hum. The 2 top figures of the Mount Shu sword sect looked at each other and did not say anything. Their expressions did not change either. The heaven-opening sword vibrated at first, and after the turbulence in the surroundings, it also calmed down. As a swordsmanship creation treasure, it was impossible for the heaven-opening sword not to be moved by the appearance of another of its kind at the same level. But it was just a little bit moved, and it was difficult to have any other reaction. Because now, the supreme sword of the Tianyuan world belonged to someone else. However, everyone in the Mount Shu sword sect inevitably felt a bit complicated. The ancient heavenly gates creation treasure, the 9th heaven sword, and the Grand Jiutian divine sword, had always been the target that the Mount Shu sword sect, as the dominator of swordsmanship in the divine land, was most wary of. In terms of swordsmanship, the Mount Shu sword sect valued the Grand Jiutian divine sword and the 9th heaven sword far more than the Taishu temple's heavenly sword of indifference and the Great Void double pole mystic sword technique. Previously, if there was really something that could threaten the Mount Shu sword sect's position as the #1 swordsmanship in the world, then it was most likely the Grand Jiutian divine sword and the 9th heaven sword that died young. However, the heavenly gate was destroyed in the ancient era, and the 9th heaven sword did not even have a real form before it disappeared. This was the beginning of a long era in which the Mount Shu sword sect reigned supreme in the divine land. Now, the Grand Jiutian divine sword reappeared in the world, and the legendary 9th heaven sword finally came to Tianyuan, but the situation was no longer the same. The Mount Shu sword sect was no longer the Mount Shu sword sect of the past. The immortal heaven was destroyed, and the world was created. The divine land was no longer the divine land of the past, and the first holy land of swordsmanship in Tianyuan had also changed owners. The world had changed, and the world had changed in just a few decades. Even people like Xian Longxing and Tiangang swordsmen could not help but feel emotional at this moment. Beside Xiaoyan, Luo Qingwu looked calm, and looked at the ninth heaven soared above Chu Yang's head with interest. As a sword cultivator, it was impossible not to pay attention to the birth of a sword creation treasure. However, Luo Qingwu's attention at this moment was still on the world that was undergoing dramatic changes in front of her. Xiao Yan had returned to the Divine Land, and the Tianxing Taoist could no longer make waves. At this moment, Luo Qingwu was naturally more concerned about the situation in the spiritual sea. That was where the final battle would take place. On the vast land of infinite wasteland, Luo Qingwu's spirit doppelganger was also staring at the void in front of her. There, the black and white light beams had gradually disappeared, but the void between heaven and earth was still shaking. Light and shadow floated in front of her, as if the scenes of the spiritual sea and the Dead Sea were alternating. Silently stood between heaven and earth, her expression cold and indifferent. Her eyes were focused and as sharp as a sword, as if it could pierce through the boundaries of heaven and earth and reach the spiritual sea. At this moment, in the spiritual sea, the gray-bounded space between the Dead Sea and the spiritual sea was constantly shaking. In the bounded space, the Haotian mirror hung high in the air, and the mirror light gathered all the heavens and went deep into the crack of the Dead Sea. Lin Feng's original body stood there, looking at the Dead Sea on the other side of the crack. Chapter 1457. Lin Feng looked at the gap of the Dead Sea in the distance, and saw a path of light extending into it. The path of light seemed to have lost the concept of length and direction at this moment. It was difficult to describe its specific location in the Dead Sea, but it gave off a feeling that it was going deeper and deeper. In the quiet Dead Sea world, two figures vaguely appeared. These two figures seemed to be in the center of the Dead Sea, but also seemed to be so huge that it filled the entire Dead Sea world, making it difficult to grasp. As the path of light extended, the position of the two figures gradually became possible to determine and describe. They were in a space of dead silence, and the path of light extended straight until it reached them. It seemed to be connected to where they were, and also connected the Dead Sea world and the outside world. The colossal world, the Dead Sea, and the Spirit Sea were three worlds that were closely connected and overlapped. At this moment they shook together. Following this series of changes, the two figures in the Dead Sea gradually became clearer. Lin Feng looked over and saw the two figures. One of them had a figure that was difficult to describe with words. It was as if it had the shape of a mustard seed and Mount Meru at the same time. It was difficult to judge with words. This figure looked as small as a speck of dust. It was like an ordinary middle-aged monk dressed in a gray robe, but it was also like a Buddha as huge as the creation of the universe. It filled the entire world, and was so grand that it could no longer be defined by size. This Buddha's figure was solemn, sacred, and grand. There were 5 balls of light above its head, manifesting the pure land of color, the pure land of victory, the pure land of bliss, the pure land of karma, and the pure land of joy. These 5 worlds were located in the 4 corners of the center. It was not inferior to anything and was supreme. It was unimaginably beautiful and indescribable. It was as if everything that one wanted to do could be easily achieved, and everything was perfect. It was as if one had never felt pain or suffered. Those who lived in it were relieved of the pain of reincarnation and reached the pure land. It was endowed with glory and had all the qualities and abilities to achieve enlightenment. Those who lived in it would no longer regress or mutate. Layers of abstruse concepts flowed out from it and illuminated the heavens. It made people want to throw themselves into the 5 pure land, as if they would not perish even if the heavens and earth were to perish. The 5 skandhas of color, action, thought, receptiveness, and consciousness were all purified. The Dharmakaya wisdom, the wisdom of what is done, the wisdom of no distinction, the wisdom of equality, and the omniscient mirror were all proved. The worries of ignorance, jealousy, greed, selfishness, and anger were all turned. Amidst the boundless Buddhist light, it calmed one's mind. It was as if one had achieved the purity of one's nature, achieved everything, and was at ease. One's desires increased, and the Dharma nature remained unchanged. Above each of the 5 pure lands, there were flashes of light and shadows. Above each pure land, there was a figure sitting in each of the 5 balls of fire. They were the figures of the 5 wisdom kings, the immovable wisdom king, the great wisdom king, the Junchali wisdom king, the Trailokayavijaya wisdom king, and the Vajra Yaksha wisdom king. Lin Feng stared at the Buddha and vaguely had a feeling that he was looking at himself. He could see his true nature and the mysteries of heaven and earth. Just by looking at this Buddha, he felt as if he had gained enlightenment and gained a bit more Buddha nature. Needless to say, Lin Feng naturally recognized the person in front of him. He was the former Ru Huang, Tathagata Taoist, and later the master of Buddhism, the founding master of the great Thunderclap Monastery, the present Buddha, Gautama Buddha. The other party's gaze also landed on Lin Feng. He was calm and natural, as if he was not the number 1 Buddha enemy, but just one of the many living beings. The two of them looked at each other and did not say anything. There was no need for words to communicate. However, what caught Lin Feng's attention was the other figure beside the Buddha. Although the 2 figures became clearer as the path of light arrived, the figure beside the Buddha still had an unfathomable and blurry feeling. Looking at the other party, Lin Feng vaguely felt that it was absurd. It was as if he was facing an independent greater thousand world. It was different from the Divine Land and Tianhuang mainland. It was completely different from the great Heaven Yuan world as a whole, as if it was a brand new greater thousand world. Ever since Lin Feng came to the great Heaven Yuan world, this was the first time he felt like he was facing another greater thousand world. Even though this feeling is not clear and is not complete, but Lin Feng can still clearly feel that mysterious feeling. The closest feeling he had was when he saw Wen Qiang's figure in the underworld sea. However, the image of Wen Qiang back then was only a remnant of dermic power and was far from being in contact with the real person at this moment. Lin Feng's gaze froze slightly and the ethereal figure gradually became clear. The person that appeared before him was a man in white. His facial features looked extremely ordinary, but it was difficult to tell his age. The other party's entire body was filled with a vast and mysterious aura. It made one feel as if they were in a completely unfamiliar world that needed to be explored and rethought bit by bit. The original world's standards, principles, laws, experience, and so on were gradually no longer suitable for this man in white. If not for the fact that Lin Feng had already reached the void reversion and Tao integration stage, he would not even be able to see the other party's appearance clearly. The man in white seemed to be a little moved when he met Lin Feng's gaze, and he also looked at Lin Feng. Lin Feng met his gaze calmly. The other party's identity was clear. Apart from the founding master of the Taishu Temple, the Taishu Taoist, there was no one else who could have such cultivation and strength. Outside the Dead Sea, under the Haotian mirror, Tao Lord Tai closed his eyes once again. He seemed to have aged a lot, and his aura also dimmed. Even the radiance of the Haotian mirror temporarily dimmed. Tao Lord Tai slowly bowed to the man in white in the Dead Sea. Disciple Tai pays his respects to Patriarch. Lin Feng looked over. In the Dead Sea, he only saw the Taishu Taoist and the Buddha. There was no sign of Yuehua Tian. He nodded slightly in his heart. So that's how it is the Taishu Taoist and Tao Lord Tai's gazes met. Tao Lord Tai took a deep breath, and a large amount of detailed information was transmitted to his patriarch through his gaze. The world had changed, but the Taishu Taoist's gaze remained calm and rarely fluctuated. There were only a few times when he sighed softly. Extreme Spirit of the Divine Abyss, Yudu of the Heavenly Seas, Crimson Sun Galaxy, Master of the Celestial Gate of Wonders, heaven-punishing sword. The Taishu Taoist's voice was soft, and his tone was calm, but it was full of contradictions. It was as if another boundless world was constantly squeezing the boundaries of the heaven primordial world. After a few sighs, the Taishu Taoist's gaze landed on Lin Feng again, but he didn't say anything. Silently, he just looked at Lin Feng. On the other side, the Buddha stood up. Without saying a word, he stepped onto the path of radiance and walked out of the Dead Sea. Seeing him stand up, the Taishu Taoist's expression changed slightly, but he still kept his mouth shut. Lin Feng, on the other hand, noticed that as the Buddha stood up, a wave suddenly appeared in the dead silence and tranquil Dead Sea. However, as the Taishu Taoist sat still, although there were ripples in the Dead Sea and it seemed to be expanding, it couldn't create too big of a wave. In the gray boundary where the Spirit Sea and the Dead Sea intersected, the future star-glazed Buddha Lord, who had been sitting on the top of the sky-reaching pagoda with his eyes closed, opened his eyes. He first looked at the grand Taoist Lord and said, "The karma between our families will be settled today." He then looked at Lin Feng and said silently, "Master of the Celestial Sect, at least let me see that you have the ability to transcend. If you have the ability to transcend, what harm is there in me waiting for you? If you don't have the ability to transcend and block my path, then we can only fight it out." As he spoke, the Gautama Buddha in the center had already stepped out of the Dead Sea and entered the gray independent boundary where the Spirit Sea and the Dead Sea intersected. He descended into the Spirit Sea and returned to the boundless world. The Gautama Buddha stepped out of the Dead Sea. The feeling that seemed to fill the universe also appeared in the Spirit Sea and expanded outward. Gradually, even the boundless world could feel it. Tens of thousands of Buddhist believers, regardless of their level of cultivation, whether they were virtuous or foolish, all felt as if there was a flash of light in their hearts. Their thoughts became clearer. It was as if the era of Buddhism had finally arrived again. 3 seats appeared on the sky-towering pagoda. The future glazed Buddha Master still sat in the middle seat, while the Gautama Buddha, who had returned to the boundless world, sat on the left of the future glazed Buddha Master. The sky-towering pagoda was extremely mysterious. Boundless mighty power spread out from the sky-towering pagoda. The seat on the right of the future glazed Buddha Master was still empty. However, there were countless rays of light shining on it. Although there were no real figures, there were infinite possibilities and infinite power concept. The Gautama Buddha Master did not speak, but the future glazed Buddha Master said in a low voice, "Excellent, excellent." The 48,000 relics on the sky-towering pagoda shone brightly. Within the boundless Buddhist light, the light of a Buddha seemed to appear in each relic. The 48,000 Buddhas sat on the sky-towering pagoda together, illuminating the heavens and manifesting the Eastern glazed light world. This was different from the manifestation of the future glazed Buddha Master's magic power. In the Eastern glazed light world, the Buddhist light shone on every corner of the Spirit Sea. It pierced through the Spirit Sea and shone into the boundless world. At this moment, all the heavens and the myriad worlds were filled with Buddhist chanting, clear and quiet like glass. The 48,000 palms of the future glazed Buddha Master joined together, while the Gautama Buddha Master pushed out a palm towards Lin Feng. When this palm landed, it was as if the entire Eastern glazed light world, the entire boundless world, was collapsing towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng chuckled. "Fellow Taoist, you should wait in peace for a few days." As he spoke, Lin Feng also punched out. The great Tao in the Spirit Sea was swept up, supporting Lin Feng's punch. In the Spirit Sea, the boundaries of the world shook. Light and shadows floated, manifesting the vast, starry sky of the universe. At this moment, all the stars in the sky shook and fell, deviating from their original orbits. The entire universe's orbits were scattered, as if doomsday had arrived. Chapter 1458. On one side, he had once ascended to the throne of the human emperor and ruled the divine prefecture. Later, He abdicated the throne and became a Buddha, founding a lineage of Buddhism that had been passed down through the ages and had countless believers. He had gone to the Dead Sea in the ancient era and returned to the boundless world today. On the other side, he had suddenly risen and founded the lineage of Xianmen Tianzong. In just a few decades, he had completed a feat that others could not achieve in thousands of years. He had dominated the world and looked down on the world. The master of Buddhism and the master of Xianmen, two legendary figures, had officially begun a battle in the Spirit Sea today. At this moment, Gautama Buddha's cultivation was not comparable to the future glazed Buddha Lord. He formed a seal with both hands, the two middle fingers bent like a sword, and the two index fingers reached out to the back of the two middle fingers. This was the last move of the Vairocana palm, the Vajra realm seal. With one punch, the light of Buddha illuminated the world, but the light in front of Lin Feng seemed to dim as he was absorbed into the world created by the combination of Buddhism, Zen, and martial arts. Gautama Buddha's fist was domineering. It controlled the present and dominated the boundless world, but it was fierce and unparalleled. This was reflected in the powerful fist will, which was difficult to resist. The fist will had completely condensed into a substance. Being in the fist will, one seemed to be completely isolated from the outside world and trapped in the sea of bitterness. Lin Feng's heart moved slightly, but he felt like he had seen his own reality. He felt that this was a good opportunity for him to understand the Tao. But he knew that the Tao here was the Tao of Buddhism. If he was enlightened, he would immediately become a Buddha and escape the sea of bitterness. If he was not enlightened, he would forever sink and never be free. The Buddha said that he was the only one in the heavens and earth, but he was actually referring to the true self. If he could distinguish the true self and see through the false emptiness, all evil would not be confused and he would reach the nirvana realm. Seeing this, Lin Feng smiled. Unfortunately, you have your Tao, and I have mine. He also punched back. Suddenly, yin and yang were reversed, and the stars in the sky were shaken. In the void, there seemed to be layers of universes existing. Every layer of the universe fell into turmoil. The stars moved and wild storms were set off. Such a violent force, concentrated together, confused the boundaries, as if it had transcended reality, and forcibly interfered with the fist intent created by the Buddha's Vajra realm free seal that cut off all troubles. The sea of bitterness formed by the fist intent, at this moment, constantly shook and tumbled, gradually dissipating. A spot of light rose from the boundless sea of bitterness, and then led Lin Feng out of the seal, away from the fist will formed by the Vajra realm freedom seal. Looking at Lin Feng, Buddha Shakyamuni spoke for the first time. His voice was so loud that it seemed to echo out into the Kiliakosm, and yet it also seemed to whisper into the ears of everyone present. To not be obsessed with the outside world is to distinguish one's true self. With this simple sentence, rays of Buddhist light shot out from Lin Feng's body, illuminating his entire body like colored glass. He actually looked like he was about to transform into a Buddha. Lin Feng shook his head indifferently. There are thousands of great Taoists in the world, but they all lead to the same destination. Fellow Taoist, you are mistaken. In an instant, the Buddhist light around him dimmed, as if it had been extinguished, and he returned to his original state. Buddha Shakyamuni looked calm. When he heard this, he just smiled and did not explain. Once again, he pushed his palm toward Lin Feng. This time, the palm print was not any of the 10 moves of the Mahavairocana palm that Lin Feng knew. It was not the boundless seal, the infinite seal, the wisdom fist seal, the Dharma boundary seal, or the last move, the Vajra realm free seal. He just stretched out his palm, erecting it vertically, his palm facing Lin Feng, pushing out with a flat palm. However, such a palm pushing toward Lin Feng put more pressure on Lin Feng than the Vajra realm free seal just now. As the palm fell, heaven and earth seemed to turn into a vacuum, and nothing existed. And it seemed that he himself should not exist. The world disappeared, the sea of bitterness disappeared, and the cause and effect of all things disappeared. Everything seemed to have disappeared. Looking back, he could not see the past; looking down, he could not see the suffering, and looking up, he could not see the shore. Everything was an illusion, and at this moment, he finally restored his true self. It seemed that everything he was witnessing now was the truth, and the only falsehood in this world was himself. Lin Feng only felt that he seemed to be turning into nothingness. It was not that he had disappeared and ceased to exist, but that he had never existed. Good. 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 Lin Feng laughed instead. This is the real Buddha's palm. If it wasn't so amazing, how could it be called the first martial arts magic in the history of the Divine Land? As he laughed, above Lin Feng's head, his fruit of the way appeared. It was mysterious and indescribable, as if the beginning and end of all things had returned to one. Although the fruit of the way appeared, Lin Feng did not activate it. Instead, he struck back again. But this time, it was not just the changing heaven and earth magic power that transformed into martial arts fist will. In the empty world, streams of light of the great Tao suddenly appeared together, and then gathered towards Lin Feng. Countless streams of light rolled down, and it was shocking. One after another, light spots appeared on Lin Feng's body, and they were so dense that it was hard to count. These light spots turned into bright talisman characters, and they gathered together, falling into Lin Feng's consciousness. In his consciousness, these characters constantly rearranged and combined, deducing and decomposing the mysteries of the great Tao of heaven and earth. In the end, all the characters combined together, turning into a mysterious and unfathomable immortal chapter. It formed a Tai Chi diagram, and it kept spinning in the void of Lin Feng's consciousness, as if it had exhausted the mysteries of the great Tao of heaven and earth. The fourth chapter of the Heavenly Virtue Scripture, Tai Chi Tao Scripture. As Lin Feng punched out, light spots appeared one after another, intertwining and evolving into a mysterious fist will. There seemed to be many light spots, but in the eyes of the ancestral Buddha, it was instantly clear. 129,600, the number of one yu of the thousands of great Tao of heaven and earth, seemed to be supporting Lin Feng's punch. Everywhere the punch passed, many things in the empty world reappeared. The fist will of both sides clashed at this moment, neither giving way to the other. Together, they played out the top martial arts clash of the human cultivators of the Divine Land. In the process of fighting with the ancestral Buddha, who was at the intermediate and completion stage and at the immortal realm, the Tai Chi Tao manual in Lin Feng's consciousness became more and more complete. This also caused his punch to become more and more powerful. Under the support of the light of the great Tao, astonishing power flowed out of his body, and he actually vaguely mixed up the boundaries between his physical body, Qi, and primordial spirit. Although the ancestral Buddha could not see the Tai Chi Tao manual in Lin Feng's consciousness, he could feel the changes in Lin Feng's aura. Gautama Buddha did not speak. His other palm also pushed out towards Lin Feng. But this time, it was no longer a mystique of the martial way. In the center of his palm, a swastika symbol spun continuously. As the swastika symbol spun, it brought with it countless images that appeared chaotically. The number was so large that it could not be multiplied. As a result, the many images seemed extremely heavy together. Lin Feng looked over and saw that within the layers of images, there were hundreds of lives, as if the lives of countless people had experienced. From immemorial times to the present and then to the distant future. Countless people's past, countless people's present, and countless people's future. The great heaven primordial worlds past, the great heaven primordial worlds present, and the great heaven primordial worlds future. Every living being, in the course of their own lives, more or less, would experience all sorts of disturbing things, forming many karmic ties. Lines of karmic ties densely covered the void, flashing with a crystalline luster. There was an uncountable number of them. The karmic ties of all living beings, the past, the present, and the future, were all gathered here at this moment. With the ancestral Buddha's palm, it pressed down towards Lin Feng. That heavy feeling was enough to make anyone feel like they could not bear it. 4 cultivators below the immortal realm to be entangled with such complicated and immeasurable karmic ties of all living beings, apart from a small minority, most would find it hard to bear. Some might even go insane. Even the strongest powerhouses at the immortal realm like the ancestral Buddha would find it hard to sort out the entanglement within. The layers of karmic ties wrapped around Lin Feng's body. Instantly, he felt like he was trapped in the endless mortal world, unable to escape. His mystique, dermic powers, and spiritual consciousness were slowly being erased. Lin Feng did not move for a moment. Instead, he carefully experienced the feeling. To him, this kind of experience of being entangled in the mortal world was already extremely unfamiliar. At this moment, he felt like he was experiencing the complicated lives of countless lives at the same time. He had walked through endless years, and he did not know where the end was. Perhaps it was more likely that there would never be an end. If there really was a day when it ended, perhaps he would follow all living beings into an unavoidable eternal slumber, and be destroyed along with this great thousand world. At this moment, all of Lin Feng's mystique and dermic powers seemed to have dissipated. Only the Taiji diagram in his sea of consciousness that was manifested by the Taiji scripture continued to spin. Silently, the mysterious Tao fruit above his head continued to float. It was as if he had experienced the long lives of billions of lives, but it also seemed like only a short instant. A faint smile suddenly appeared on Lin Feng's face. Without waiting for the ancestral Buddha to make his next move, the aura of his dermic powers suddenly vibrated and changed again. His spiritual consciousness and dermic powers that had been worn down by the karmic ties of all living beings instantly soared and returned to their peak. The innumerable karmic ties that were entangling his body like a spider web disappeared at this moment. Slowly, the Tao fruit above Lin Feng's head descended and fused with Lin Feng's body, causing Lin Feng to seem like the origin of thousands of karmic ties, and also like the final node of all karmic ties. At this moment, Lin Feng's body seemed to be plated with a layer of bright and dark light. He understood the principles of all living beings, and also seemed to be able to accommodate all existences. Everything in the world could be found in him, and everything in the world could also be found in him. Even more karmic ties descended, but they all disappeared without a trace on Lin Feng's body. It was as if they had fallen into water, but they did not cause any splash or sound. Not even a ripple bloomed. Seeing this, Gautama Buddha, who was on the sky-reaching pagoda, let out a great sigh. As expected. Next to him, the future glazed Buddha Lord did the same. As expected. As if confirming his guess, Gautama Buddha shook his head and retracted his palm. The countless karmic ties disappeared and returned to his body. Gautama Buddha no longer activated the 3 lives karma curse. He did not stop there. Instead, he flipped his palm and enveloped Lin Feng. Chapter 1459. Gautama Buddha flipped his palm and shrouded Lin Feng. His 5 fingers spread out as if he was holding up the boundless universe. When his palm fell, it was as if the boundless universe fell on Lin Feng. In the void, thousands of Buddha lights surged and manifested into the boundless pure land of Buddha. All the gods and Buddhas sat in it. In the Buddhist kingdom, Gautama Buddha's figure disappeared. There was only the Buddha light in front of Lin Feng. At this moment, his figure seemed to be separated from the great heaven world and jumped into another boundless universe. The connection between his soul sense, dharma power, and spiritual energy had been severed from the spirit sea he had been in before, from the boundless universe, and from the great heaven primal world. The boundless pure land of Buddha in front of him was not an ordinary foreign space, a small world created by divine sense and dharma power, or a medium-sized world. It was like a real boundless universe independent of great heaven world. Between heaven and earth, one could even vaguely see the great way light extending in the sky of the spirit sea, as if the infinite great way had condensed into a substance. The spiritual chi in the world was abundant and complete, and the flow of the spiritual chi was completely different from that of the great heaven world. In this pure land, Buddha was the creator and the only ruler. His words were the law, and all wishes came true. Endless Buddhist chanting seemed to ring from the bottom of Lin Feng's heart. It was melodious and mighty, quiet and natural, full of the joy of great liberation and perfection. Lin Feng calmly looked at everything in front of him and smiled. However, this was not the smile of enlightenment, but a leisurely smile. It was as if he had entered the pure land of Buddha for sightseeing. He raised his hand and gently pointed. One light spot after another appeared in the void. 129,600, which was the number of 1 yuan. As Lin Feng pointed with his finger, the light spots suddenly spread out and turned into clouds of light mist. In each cloud of light mist, more small light spots appeared. They were hazy and clustered together. Gautama Buddha's eyes moved slightly. 196 million each, and every one of the dots of light emitted beams of light that shot out for tens of thousands of meters. 296 billion beams of light filled the air, intersecting with one another as they filled the entire Buddhist kingdom. The pure land of the Buddhist nation that was surging with boundless light actually became dark at this moment. Only streams of light were constantly shuttling between heaven and earth. The grand and solemn Buddhist chanting gradually became lower at this moment. Although it was still quiet, it seemed to have gone far away in an instant and was difficult to hear. Lin Feng said faintly, "This technique is called the Tai Chi Single Origin Treasure Light. Sorry for making you laugh." The Taiji 1 yuan treasure light from the Taiji Taoist scripture gradually froze the entire Pure Land at this moment. It wasn't just the myriad things in the world, even the entire operation and development of this world itself was frozen, unable to be created or destroyed. The great Tao of heaven and earth, the principle that life and death were eternal, was actually being interfered with at this moment. It became absurd and fake, causing the entire world to seem illusory and unreal. The Tao fruit appeared on top of Lin Feng's head again. It suddenly extended from a point to a line, from the indescribable to the indescribable, into a straight line, evolving into the eternal calamity light. After Lin Feng fused with the Tao, the eternal calamity light was no longer the same as before. At this moment, with the support of the Taiji Taoist scripture, it instantly became even more mysterious. The concept of the eternal calamity light and the Taiji 1 yuan treasure light seemed to complement each other was vividly displayed at this moment. The Pure Land that was previously frozen by the Taiji 1 yuan treasure light was bathed in the radiance of the eternal calamity light and finally resumed its operation. However, at this moment, the Pure Land that had resumed its operation was no longer in accordance with its original process. Instead, it was rapidly heading towards nirvana. The Buddhist chanting dissipated, the Buddhist light dimmed, and countless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas perished together. Their golden bodies withered and turned into dust. The Sarira tree withered, the white lotus was destroyed, and the Buddha's pagoda lost its luster, its surface weathered and peeled off. The Gautama Buddha's words resounded in the void. As the Buddhist chanting sounded, the entire world immediately glowed with radiance. This Pure Land seemed as if it would never suffer any calamities and would never be destroyed. It protected all those who were immersed in it until eternity. However, when Gautama Buddha tried to dispel the Taiji 1 yuan treasure light and the eternal calamity light, Lin Feng chuckled and tapped the ground lightly with the tip of his foot. He transformed into a stream of light and left the Pure Land. Lin Feng, who had once again landed in the spiritual sea, smiled at Gautama Buddha. "Using the 5-finger mountain to suppress me? With fellow Taoists' magic power, you might not be able to do it, but this Buddhist kingdom in the palm is truly a new sight in your hands. It's truly breathtaking. Above Gautama Buddha's head, the 5 great Pure Lands dissipated for a moment. However, in the next instant they had already recovered. Lin Feng's palm stretched out horizontally, turning around and grabbing towards Gautama Buddha. As he opened and closed his fingers, the Taiji 1 Yuan treasure light suddenly spread out. 296 billion streams of light enveloped the void and covered the eastern Vairocana light world with the sky-reaching pagoda as the center. Under the cover of the Taiji 1 Yuan treasure light, the operation of the eastern Vairocana light world also became sluggish. A Dao fruit suddenly appeared in the center of Lin Feng's palm. Together with Lin Feng's palm, it pressed toward the Buddha. Wherever the profound Dao fruit passed, all obstructions vanished. This point was like the birth of all things, but also like the end of all things. Thousands of principles were all concentrated here. Gautama Buddha pushed out his palm. At this moment, his figure seemed to be so huge that it could not be any bigger. It filled the entire great heaven primordial world. However, it also seemed as small as a speck of dust, as if it did not exist in this world. The independent Buddhist Pure Land vaguely appeared in his palm again and faced Lin Feng's Dao fruit. It was like the vast thousand worlds outside of heaven primordial. The thousands of principles of heaven primordial could not be used. As a result, Lin Feng's Dao fruit seemed to be much slower to eliminate it. However, wherever Lin Feng's Dao fruit passed, the Pure Land continued to disintegrate. It returned to that mysterious point, never to be seen again. The situation fell into a stalemate. On Lin Feng's body, a majestic black and white light shone. The sound of the great Tao resonated between heaven and earth, shaking the 9 heavens and 10 earth. Under the support of the creation divine light, although Lin Feng's Dao fruit did not change, the Taiji 1 Yuan treasure light and the black and white intertwined creation divine light fused, and a layer of black and white light was plated over it. 296 billion streams of light vibrated together, pressing down on the eastern Vairocana light world from all directions. The condensed world was like real glass. It constantly shattered into pieces in the void and scattered everywhere. Even Lin Feng's palm was pressing down on the sky-towering pagoda bit by bit. Gautama Buddha's expression did not change, and his gaze was calm. Silently, the future star-glazed Buddha Master looked at Lin Feng's palm pressing down and the Dao fruit in Lin Feng's palm. After observing for a moment, the future star-glazed Buddha Master's 41,000 arms spread out in unison and formed hand seals. The hand seals landed on the sky-towering pagoda. Instantly, the sky-towering pagoda shone brightly and shot into the sky. Together with Gautama Buddha Master, it supported Lin Feng's palm that was pressing down. On the sky-towering pagoda, the 48,000 sariras transformed into layers of Buddha light. They illuminated the heavens and the earth, and their aura became even more majestic. But what attracted the most attention was on the top of the pagoda, to the right of the future star-glazed Buddha Master. That place was originally empty, with only endless radiance shining. It seemed to contain countless possibilities and the supreme great Tao. But at this moment, the radiance became more and more dazzling, and there seemed to be a faint figure of a Buddha appearing. In this special environment, where the Spirit Sea and the Dead Sea intersected, the heavens and the earth shook together. The tightly stacked Spirit Sea, the Dead Sea, and the boundless universe seemed to be affected at this moment. The radiance of the great Tao in the Spirit Sea was guided to the right of the future star-glazed Buddha Master, and the Dead Sea, which had been silent all this time, rippled slightly at this moment. Silently and seemingly without any color, an indescribable stream of water that was neither black nor white surged out and landed on the light on the right of the future star-glazed Buddha Master. The extremely terrifying stream of water was formed from the condensed power of the Dead Sea. The Buddha figure in the boundless light was still illusory and difficult to see, but the power and aura within it was becoming more and more vast and vigorous. That powerful power was ethereal and unpredictable, like the future with infinite possibilities. It was difficult to grasp, but it also shook people's hearts, causing them to be able to clearly feel its power. On the sky-piercing pagoda, the light shadows of the Buddhas formed by the 48,000 relics all solidified at this moment, turning into golden bodies, as if the real 48,000 Buddhas had descended into the world at the same time. The vigorous and vast power, at this moment, truly shook the boundless universe. Gautama Buddha sat among the Buddhas, and the 5 great pure lands above his head had all disappeared. The magnificent Buddhist world appeared once again, and it was much grander than when he had manifested it purely with his own magical power. The boundless Buddhist world was neither born nor destroyed, did not enter reincarnation, and did not suffer hardships. The boundless and majestic Buddha light, at this moment, could even resist Lin Feng's fruit of the way. Under Lin Feng's fruit of the way, the Buddha light continued to dissipate, but it did not seem to reduce in the slightest. It was still in the void. The Taiji 1 Yuan treasure light stabilized the Pure Land world, and the operation of the Pure Land world seemed to become a little sluggish, but it was still stable. The boundless Buddha light even began to roll back Lin Feng's Taiji 1 Yuan treasure light. Within the Buddha light, there was a sense of tranquility and nirvanic destruction. Wherever it went, the Buddha light dimmed, but other existences also disappeared, extinguished along with the Buddha light. All worries disappeared. It was neither born nor destroyed, neither increased nor decreased, and there was no dirt or hindrance. Under the baptism of the nirvanic Buddha light, the streams of light formed by the Taiji 1 Yuan treasure light, like silk threads, also began to break in the void. Gautama Buddha faced Lin Feng's palm and pushed out his palm. Originally, Lin Feng's palm was pressing down on the Buddha and the sky-piercing pagoda, but at this moment, he suddenly felt that the one resisting was him, and the one looking down was the Buddha. There was no movement at all, and the positions of the two sides had been completely reversed. Chapter 1460. Looking at Buddha's palm, the world in front of Lin Feng suddenly turned upside down. Originally, it was his own palm that was pressing down on Buddha. But now, the Buddha's palm was pressing down on him. The concept of up and down in space-time had lost its original concept and could no longer be measured by common sense. Gautama Buddha, who was in the position of the past, attacked. Future star-glazed Buddha, who was in the position of the future, and the illusory Buddha, who was in the position of the future, supported the towering pagoda and manifested a boundless Pure Land. Together with Gautama Buddha's palm, it pressed down on Lin Feng. Lin Feng raised his eyebrows slightly, a faint smile on his face. With a thought, a figure appeared beside him. It was Fate Creation Boy. Fate Creation Boy held the Book of Destruction in his hand and gently flipped through it. Streams of destruction chi rushed out from it and turned into dark airflows. They immediately blocked nirvanic Buddha's light. The billowing airflows were like the sky and the sea. They were vast and boundless, causing the entire vast 1,000 worlds to decay. But these airflows were steadily concentrated at one point. Then, they broke through the barrier of space-time and fell into the Pure Land formed by Buddha's Dharma power. The Pure Land, which seemed to be eternally peaceful and blissful, seemed to be impervious to tribulations, indestructible, and immovable in space-time, started to decay and collapse. Lin Feng pointed his finger and the Tao fruit in front of him turned into an eternal light of calamity. It surged into the Pure Land along with the Book of Destruction's nirvanic chi. They went on a rampage and pierced through the Buddha Land. Suddenly, the Pure Land shook violently. Then, a strange scene happened. Everything in that vast world was actually flipped upside down. The thick earth suddenly flipped to the top and the vast sky fell to the bottom. Countless Saha treasured flowers also fell to the ground, revealing an upside-down mountain peak. The mountain peak was extremely majestic. It was like a world of its own. Tens of thousands of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Arhats, Jedis, and Samanis sat on it. But at this moment, the mountain peak also turned upside down. It lost its power of suppressing the universe. The many Buddhas and Arhats sitting cross-legged on the mountain also overturned and fell down because of the upside-down mountain peak. The scene looked absurd and distorted, as if it was a harbinger of the end of the world. At this moment, the entire Buddhist paradise had lost its tranquil, natural, and grand atmosphere of wisdom, and it seemed as if it had entered the age of Dharma decline, causing chaos to arise and order to collapse. Under the apocalyptic scene, the Pure Land world began to gradually collapse, and at this moment, even the Tongtian pagoda was shaken. The 48,000 Buddha shadows around the pagoda dimmed one by one, and the chanting also became softer. At this moment, the enormous Buddha's pagoda was actually tilting in midair. In the void, it was difficult to determine the direction. Under the blessing of layers of Buddha's light, the Babel Buddha seemed to be unshakable. It stood upright in any spacetime. But at this moment, everyone could clearly feel that the Buddha's pagoda had actually deviated from its normal direction and was tilting towards one side. The direct effect of this tilt was that Gautama Buddha and the future glazed Buddha Lord, who sat side by side on the top of the Buddha's pagoda, were unable to sit still. It was as if they were about to be overturned and fall from the Babel Buddha. No matter what you're thinking, it's fine if you don't make a move. But since you've made a move, then let's have a good talk. Lin Feng smiled and said, "If you can't defeat me, then we can get along peacefully. If you can defeat me, then you can make me disappear from this world? That's a good plan, but unfortunately, I'm not someone without a temper." As he spoke, he stretched out his other hand, and the Taiji 1 yuan light enveloped the pagoda once more. This time, the Buddha was unable to dispel it. 296 billion streams of light enveloped the sky-piercing pagoda, and a profound and enormous force surged out, forcefully flipping the sky-piercing pagoda over and crushing the enormous pagoda, causing it to tilt to the side. With this tilt, the Pure Land that enveloped the surroundings completely collapsed. The Buddha's shadow that was condensed on the top of the Babel Buddha dissipated as well. Gautama Buddha and the future glazed Buddha Lord sighed in unison, and then they left the top of the Babel Buddha pagoda together. If they didn't leave in time, the Babel Buddha that was already flipping over would press down on them. At that time, if Lin Feng continued to exert more force, they would be pressed down on the Babel Buddha pagoda instead. The founder of the Great Thunderclap Temple, one of the top experts in the history of the Divine Land, the master of the Buddhist sect, Gautama Buddha, had been forcefully flipped over from his Babel Buddha pagoda. Taoist Master Taoist frowned as he watched this shocking scene before him. The expressions of Tao Masters Zhengyi and Xianwen were extremely solemn. Beside them were the magic treasure of the Supreme Formation Breaking Drum, the Primordial Spirit Drum Immortal, and the magic treasure of the Void Yin Yang Bell, the Primordial Spirit Yin Yang Elder. Right now, the four of them couldn't even take care of themselves. When Lin Feng was fighting with the Buddha, even though they were thrown to the side, they were still locked down by Lin Feng's Yin and Yang return to origin mystical realm. Although Lin Feng didn't pay attention to them, the Dharma realm that he formed was like a cage. Streams of profound magic power slashed down on the Taishu Temple. Soon, it forced the Taishu Temple to disintegrate and reverted to the primordial spirit drum and the void yin-yang bell. The profound magic power was endless, continuously weakening the seriously injured Shoichi Daishin and Taoist Master Xian Yi. Even though they were in trouble, when everyone saw the scene of Gautama Buddha and the future star-glazed Buddha being thrown down from the Babel Pagoda by Lin Feng, they still felt shocked. At this moment, the Haotian mirror gradually regained its vitality. Taoist Master Xian Yi's expression was still a little dispirited, but he still gently touched the Haotian mirror with his finger. While maintaining the path to the Dead Sea, The Haotian mirror released a beam of mirror light that fell on Lin Feng's yin and yang returning wondrous realm. Illuminated by the mirror light, the yin and yang returning wondrous realm began to disintegrate. Lin Feng turned around and smiled. "Stay here." As he spoke, he flicked his finger and a light spot flew out. The light spot expanded rapidly in the void and instantly turned into countless talismans. Formation patterns spread out and covered the sky. A huge magic formation was formed. It was the yin and yang life and death formation. In the magic formation, a lofty immortal palace was faintly discernible, exuding supreme majesty. It was the Grand Imperial Palace, a magic treasure of creation. The Grand Imperial Palace suppressed the yin and yang life and death formation. Endless changes occurred. Rays of light rose and blocked the light of the Haotian mirror. Most of the Haotian mirror's energy was used to maintain the path in the Dead Sea. Now that it was blocked by the yin and yang life and death formation and the Grand Imperial Palace, the process of disintegrating the yin and yang returning wondrous realm was immediately slowed down. Taoist Master Xian Yi sighed again and again. He put his palms together and performed a magic art. Rays of black and white clouds and golden rays fell toward the yin and yang life and death formation and the yin and yang returning wondrous realm. Unexpectedly, Lin Feng flicked his finger again and another huge magic formation appeared. It was the yin and yang life and death formation formed by his own magic power. The real formation and the virtual formation combined, and its power was further increased. The complex and mysterious changes continued to unfold, but it still suppressed Shoichi Daishin and the others. On the other side, after Gautama Buddha and future star-glazed Buddha Master were thrown off the towering pagoda, Lin Feng did not stop. He pointed his finger again, and rays of light formed a net between heaven and earth. Then he slapped his palm and closed the pages of the Book of Destruction in the hands of Fate, Creation Boy next to him. An unprecedentedly powerful aura of destruction gushed out from the book and engulfed the towering pagoda and Gautama Buddha. Apart from Gautama Buddha, future star-glazed Buddha Master and the towering pagoda were showing signs of decay at this moment. The clear and transparent Buddha light on the surface of the towering pagoda gradually dimmed. Future star-glazed Buddha Master's many arms and palms shone like stars, but one by one, they were extinguished. Future star-glazed Buddha Master, whose whole body was as clear as glass, seemed to be covered with a layer of dust at this moment. Tranquil and carefree, he was surrounded by all kinds of troubles. Lin Feng stroked the cover of the Book of Destruction with his fingers. He looked at Gautama Buddha and asked with a smile, "My friend, do you want to use the collapse of the Great Way to decide the winner?" "I'll take it." Gautama Buddha Master did not say a word and looked at Lin Feng. In the Dead Sea, the Taishu Taoist was still sitting upright. His eyes swept across Shoichi Daishin, Tao Master Xian Yi, and the others, who were sealed by the yin and yang restoration magical realm. But he did not stop there. His eyes fell on Gautama Buddha, who was being suppressed by Lin Feng. "My friend, time is running out," the Taishu Taoist said slowly. Gautama Buddha Master turned to look at the Dead Sea and then looked at Lin Feng. He did not speak for a long time. Lin Feng also looked at the Dead Sea and saw that although the Taishu Taoist was sitting upright, the Dead Sea beneath him was fluctuating more and more violently. The soundless waves rose and fell, expanding continuously. Although the Taishu Taoist was sitting on the Dead Sea, he also began to move up and down along with the wave. Lin Feng's eyes narrowed. His beer and sea of consciousness reflected thousands of things, from the sky to the mustard seed. He had once used the water of the Dead Sea as a sacrifice to refine the sky-crushing sword. Now that he was in contact with the water of the Dead Sea, he could vaguely feel that there seemed to be something in the Dead Sea beneath the Taishu Taoist that was slowly awakening. Lin Feng looked up at the Taishu Taoist and asked seriously, "Is there really another level above the immortal realm and below the zenith heaven realm?" In the three tribulations of creation, Those who had completely completed the first tribulation were called the last days realm. Those who had completely completed the middle tribulations were called the immortal realm. Even if the great way collapsed, they would still be immortal. As for the final tribulation, it was the final tribulation before the world was destroyed and returned to nothingness. There was no distinction between the tribulation stage and the completion stage. The entire world of creation would experience the tribulation together. As long as the great Tianyuan world still existed, naturally no one knew what the process and outcome of passing through this tribulation would be. However, it was the goal of every top expert. Almighty experts who were gradually approaching this realm would have a vague feeling in their hearts and make some deductions. Therefore, under normal circumstances, those who regarded the final tribulation as nothing would be eternal. The world of creation would be destroyed, but they would not perish. Myriad tribulations would not wear them down, and they would be eternally free. The creation of countless eras in the future would not be affected. This realm was called the Zenith Heaven Realm, also known as the Eternal Realm. However, after Lin Feng fused with his own path, his magical powers, and his understanding of the great way of heaven and earth had reached a whole new level, he gradually felt that there seemed to be a gap between the immortal realm and the Zenith Heaven Realm. Chapter 1461. The Grand Heavenly Realm resided in all space-time, eternally free. In the past, Yuwang Tianhai had named her son the Grand Heavenly Realm. The meaning behind it was self-evident. That was the ultimate goal of every cultivator, be it humans or demons. It was just that up until now, no one had truly ascended to this level. After Lin Feng fused with the Tao, his understanding and perception of the great Tao of heaven and earth had reached an extremely top-notch level. He could sense that there seemed to be another level above the undying realm and below the grand heavenly realm. This level was as mysterious as it could be. It was not an increase in mystic arts or magic power, but a change in the Tao realm. Stepping into this level did not increase one's mystic arts or magic power, but their understanding of the Tao of creation had improved. At the same time, they had also taken a step closer to the grand heavenly realm. There was a possibility of transcending, or perhaps it was the final preparation before transcending. When Lin Feng continuously deduced the fourth chapter of the Book of Taoism, the Taiji Daoist scripture, when he was about to condense the Tao fruit, he could feel that in terms of the Tao realm, in terms of his understanding and perception of the creation of heaven and earth, he also faintly stepped into that level. And now, as he observed the waves of the Dead Sea, this feeling became even clearer. The Taishu Taoist looked at Lin Feng and slowly said, "I call it the Bridge of Eternity. Stepping on this bridge leads to eternity, but it might be a step or it might be endless. The true grand heavenly realm is eternal. I wonder who can truly reach it? I've been sitting in the Dead Sea for many years, sitting on this bridge for many years, but only when the final moment arrives will I know if I can take that final step." The Taishu Taoist gave Lin Feng a definite answer. On the other side, Gautama Buddha's gaze was calm, and he did not say anything. On the other side, the Taoist lord beside the Haotian mirror did not show any surprise. In the past, he had also ascended to the undying realm. Although he did not step on the bridge leading to the grand heavenly realm, he could more or less sense its existence. However, only the person involved knew how to take that step. It was difficult to explain and impart. To be able to step onto this bridge meant that he had stepped onto it. Everything would become clear to him. Lin Feng looked at the churning waters of the Dead Sea beneath the Taishu Taoist and nodded slightly. Juahuang Xuanshang, Jihuang Xinyuan, and Yu Wang Tianhai have all taken that step? Light flickered in his eyes. After taking this step, there won't be much growth in the power of the divine ability, but there will be many more wondrous things. For example, this world is eternal. Lin Feng's voice reverberated in the void. not to mention the gray bounded domain between the Dead Sea and the Spirit Sea. Even in the Spirit Sea outside the bounded domain, Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, Yu Hongyan, and Yang Qing could hear it clearly. The words of this world's eternity caused everyone to tremble slightly. They tried to understand the meaning contained within. This world is eternal. As long as the great thousand worlds exist, I will not die. As long as the great heaven primordial world exists, I will be with it. When human cultivators reached the primordial divinity realm, and the great demons of the demon race formed an indestructible demon soul, their lifespans would naturally be the same as the world. As long as they weren't killed by external forces, their lifespans would never reach the end. However, such an existence, such eternal life, was actually superficial. Not to mention the three calamities of creation, even in the face of even greater power, it was still weak. For example, the king of the underworld comprehended the cycle of life and death, and could be reborn after death in the cycle of reincarnation. This was already an extremely heaven-defying method. However, there were still many obstacles to this method. At the same time, it could be destroyed by external forces, causing the king of the underworld to be completely killed. He was killed by Yan Xinghe and the incomplete Haotian mirror in the ancient epoch and was reborn in the modern epoch. However, this time, he was killed by Wang Lin in the cycle of reincarnation and could no longer be reborn. However, those like the Taishu Taoist who stepped on the bridge of eternity truly lived as long as the world. As long as the world existed, they would not die. Even if they were killed by external enemies of the same level, as long as the great heaven primordial world still existed, they could return. In a sense, those who stepped on the bridge of eternity could only be suppressed, but could not be killed. The only power that could cause them to fall was perhaps the final calamity of creation. Lin Feng looked at the Dead Sea and at the Taishu Taoist. The way to return is this Dead Sea? The Taishu Taoist's voice was low and ethereal. Without entering the Dead Sea, I only vaguely felt it, but I couldn't explain it clearly. It was only after I entered the Dead Sea and stepped on this bridge that everything became clear. Although I can return, I will need to spend a long time in the Dead Sea. The Taishu Taoist said, apart from the absolute dragon of the first, there are two other demons here. I only just learned their names now. One of them needs some time to return, while the other, like the absolute dragon of the first, could have returned long ago. It's just that this old man and fellow Taoist Rulai blocked their way. Come to think of it, it should be the extreme spirit of the divine abyss who fell even earlier. Lin Feng nodded. There are only 3 of them. This means that even great demons in the immortal realm like Bolin Wangtian could not step on the bridge of eternity. After a pause, Lin Feng looked at the Taishu Taoist and asked, apart from the demons, it seems that no human cultivators can return. The Taishu Taoist shook his head. Fellow Taoist Tai Shitian did not take that step. As for Qi Yang, Lin Feng said calmly, he actually already had 1 foot on the bridge back then. If he could return from the Netherworld Sea and accumulate more experience, he would be able to step on the bridge. The Taishu Taoist did not say anything else. However, the waves of the Dead Sea below him became even more turbulent. Lin Feng turned to look at the Gautama Buddha. Fellow Taoist, you should have stepped on the bridge of eternity as well, right? Lin Feng did not mind using the Taishu Taoist's name. After all, the Gautama Buddha might be the first human cultivator to step on the bridge of eternity. The Gautama Buddha smiled faintly. He did not say anything, but it was clear that he agreed. Both he and the Taishu Taoist had taken this step after entering the Dead Sea for many years. However, apart from Juehuang Xuanshang, they had also sensed the presence of Jihuang Xinyuan, although they did not know who he was. The Gautama Buddha's gaze moved back and forth between the Dead Sea and Lin Feng. Lin Feng stared at the waves of the Dead Sea. After a while, a smile suddenly appeared on his face. Release it. There's no need to continue suppressing it. The Taishu Taoist looked at Lin Feng. The light in his eyes was as deep as the ocean, indescribable and unfathomable. He looked at the Book of Destruction and said slowly, "Fellow Taoist, with this treasure, you should be able to fight against a great demon in the middle and completion stages. I am not talented, but I can fight against one with the Haotian mirror. There is also fellow Taoist Buddha. However, even if I can win against the beginning dragon extinction and the divine abyss spirit, I might not be able to stop them from escaping. I heard from my disciple that you have an unparalleled sword that can destroy the heavens and destroy the Tao. In terms of killing power, it is even better than the Haotian mirror. However," the Taishu Taoist said silently, "forgive me for being blunt, but if the sword goes out of control, I'm afraid that it is no weaker than an immortal realm great demon. Fellow Taoist, how confident are you?" A faint smile appeared at the corner of Lin Feng's mouth. "What fellow Taoist wants to know is how much I am on the side of the human race, and how much I am on the side of the demon race, right? In your opinion, not helping either side is the most likely thing I will do. Or, if I force Gautama Buddha back into the Dead Sea and leave you guys to continue suppressing the three demons, that would be the most beneficial to me." The Taishu Taoist said indifferently, "I've let fellow Taoists see a joke. When Yudu of the Heavenly Seas returns, I and fellow Taoist Buddha will be fighting 2 against 3, and we won't be able to suppress them." Lin Feng smiled. "If the 3 of them really resurrect together, the possibility of them fighting each other first is probably higher than working together." The Taishu Taoist said, "If there isn't enough external pressure, then that's indeed the case." Lin Feng tilted his head slightly and looked at the Taishu Taoist. "I originally thought that with fellow Taoists' realm, having no other emotions and the benevolence of the heavenly Tao, you wouldn't care about anything other than taking the final step of transcendence. Or to put it in another way, in your eyes, there is no difference between other people and things. But now, it seems that you are still concerned about the human world in the divine land, about the orthodoxy under your sect, and about the difference between humans and demons?" The Taishu Taoist revealed a tranquil smile. "It's just a thought. When I wish to be like the heavenly Tao, I will be like the heavenly Tao. When I wish to be like a normal person, I will be like a normal person." As soon as he said this, Lin Feng couldn't help but take a closer look at him. The Taishu Taoist smiled and said, "What's more, fellow Taoist is right. If I want to take the final step, the absolute beginning dragon, divine abyss spirit, and heavenly ocean Yudu might not be willing to see me pass my days peacefully. Even if the divine abyss spirit and heavenly ocean Yudu are excluded, when the absolute beginning dragon returns, they will definitely fight with me. After stepping onto the bridge of eternity, once they return from the Dead Sea, there won't be any period of weakness. Their strength will immediately return to their peak, and the time needed to return can actually be considered as the time for recovery. I don't have the ability to completely kill them. If a great battle were to break out, it's still unknown who would die. Although they can't kill me, the time needed to return is too long. If the creation world reaches its end during this period, it's hard to predict what will happen. In that case, I can only continue to suppress them. If I can send them into destruction again, that would naturally be the best. That way, I can have more than 10,000 years of peace." The Taishu Taoist's expression was tranquil, as if he was chatting with Lin Feng about his daily life. Lin Feng's expression was also tranquil. He smiled faintly and said, "Since fellow Taoist has such a plan, then let go of the suppression." As he said this, he clapped his hands lightly, and the void domain immediately began to tremble. This independent gray space gradually became illusory. The radiance of the great Tao in the Spirit Sea pulsed even more rapidly, and the waves in the Dead Sea became even more turbulent. At this moment, the gray domain where the two worlds intersected began to slowly crack. Within the cracked domain, thousands of scenes changed. Chapter 1462. Between heaven and earth, a beam of light that was half black and half white gradually lit up again. It merged with the light of the Hautian mirror and extended far into the Dead Sea. As the light flashed and expanded, it seemed to turn into a boundary between heaven and earth. Under the effect of Lin Feng's dermic powers, the void realm actually cracked along this boundary. The aura of power in the Spirit Sea and the Dead Sea kept shaking, but they still maintained a fragile balance between them. Through the crack, the scene that appeared in front of everyone was from the vast thousand worlds. At this moment, the vast thousand worlds, the Spirit Sea world, and the Dead Sea world were closely stacked together, and the overlapping point was broken. At this point, the Spirit Sea suddenly opened up and reconnected with the vast thousand world. The tide of spirit chi spread between heaven and earth, but it was offset and annihilated by the aura in the Dead Sea. In the vast thousand domains, regardless of whether it was the people of the divine land or the vast land of Tianhuang, there was a moment of dazzling light in front of their eyes. It was so bright that they could not see anything clearly. Even their beer sea of consciousness was white. There was nothing but endless light. At this instant, the rumbling of the Grand Tao by their ears seemed to be clamorous, chaotic, and deafening, causing everyone to feel waves of dizziness. In the dark sea, Shenlong King looked at the tumbling sea, and his face was as dark as water. Xiao Yan, who was on the vast land of the divine continent, could similarly feel that the netherworld sea was in a state of being turned upside down. The originally violent sea of calamity became even more violent at this moment. In the starry sea, many stars were destroyed at the same time, and rays of starlight kept flashing in the void of the dark universe, flowing endlessly. In the Ying Sea, Li Yuanfang sat on the Yingzhou Spirit Mountain, looking expressionlessly at the white clouds in the Ying Sea. They all scattered and shattered uncontrollably, then merged, and then continued to shatter. Not only the Yingzhou Spirit Mountain that he stretched out, but he could also feel through the array that Lin Feng left behind that Penglai Spirit Mountain and Fangzhang Spirit Mountain were also not calm at this moment, and they were both shaking at the same time. In the empty sea, which was used to being a void battlefield, endless void storms were stirred up, wantonly destroying everything that existed in it. Seeing this scene, the expressions of Tao Master Tai and the others became even more solemn. Is he prepared for this? Feeling the changes of the laws of the world in the realm space, their hearts all sank to the bottom. They instantly realized what the scene in front of them meant. Sure enough, they heard Lin Feng shout, "Xianli, come!" On the infinite wasteland land of the great thousand world, Xianli, who had been looking up at the void with a cold expression, suddenly had a bright and dazzling gaze. There was a faint smile on her cold face. She suddenly turned into a sword light, emitting a clear sword chime and shooting into the nine sea. Wherever the sword passed, the heaven and the earth and billions of the sword of the world, the sword chime and earth, and Buddha dragon sword and fell, and the sea and earth and Tao sword and dragon sword and the world. Lin Feng stretched out a hand and opened his palm. The sword light condensed in his palm and turned into a long sword. As the sword light flowed, it was chaotic and extremely ferocious. At this moment, thousands of great Tao lights gathered in the Spirit Sea and became extremely bright. The Spirit Chi tide became unprecedentedly high and surged toward the sky, crushing sword in Lin Feng's hand, trying to push it out. At this moment, the Spirit Sea went completely berserk and twisted violently. The great Tao of the heavens, which had turned into invisible bands of light, shattered one after another, and a great terror that seemed like the end of the world descended. From the outside, the Spirit Sea, which seemed to be flat and closely attached to the vast thousand world, was now twisted and wrinkled. It was a shocking sight. But before the violent waves of the Spirit Sea could really engulf Lin Feng and the sky-crushing sword, the Dead Sea on the other side began to churn even more violently. Large amounts of water from the Dead Sea gushed out of the cracks uncontrollably, almost drowning the path of light that led to the inside of the Dead Sea. A powerful force that could truly destroy all things and return all things to nothingness directly collided with the waves of the Spirit Sea. The two sides collided violently, neither giving way. As they were swept up by the waves, not to mention Lord Tai and the others, even Gautama Buddha frowned slightly and retreated. As the focus of the two forces, the sky-crushing sword was also flashing rapidly at this moment. Lin Feng chuckled and released the hilt of the sky-crushing sword. Then, his palms changed continuously, and streams of divine sense magic power were injected into the sky-crushing sword. As the sky-crushing sword vibrated, black runes appeared around it one after another. The runes circulated and surrounded the sky-crushing sword. After the light of the Spirit Sea and the water of the Dead Sea collided, they turned into streams of indescribable air currents that continuously revolved around the sky-crushing sword, gradually wrapping it up. In the terrifying waves of heaven and earth, the sky-crushing sword's figure gradually disappeared, leaving only a trace of ferocious sword light at the center of the waves. And as time passed, the sword light began to become brighter and brighter, and the aura it contained also began to become more ferocious and terrifying. Lord Tai took a deep breath. He actually wants to improve it further. He's practically... Because the Dead Sea had split open, the sky-crushing sword had a chance to enter the Spirit Sea. This was the worst-case scenario that Lord Tai and the others had originally planned for. But if they could bring back the Taishu Taoist and the Buddha, then there was still a chance of success. Unfortunately, there were too many unexpected things. The Taishu Taoist and the Buddha only fully understood the meaning of the Bridge of Eternity and Jua Huang Xian Shang's condition after entering the Dead Sea. Even though they had made their speculations before they entered the Dead Sea, and Lord Tai himself had also sensed the existence of the Bridge of Eternity, everything was still a blur. Now, while they had brought back the Taishu Taoist and the Buddha, as they left the Dead Sea, Jua Huang Xian Shang and Ji Huang Xinyuan would also return. And on the other hand, even without the sky-crushing sword, Lin Feng still had the Book of Destruction with him, so he could not be easily humiliated. Now that the sky-crushing sword had entered the Spirit Sea, the situation was even more difficult to control. But what made Lord Tai and the others' hearts sink was that Lin Feng was even crazier than they had expected. Not only did he summon the sky-crushing sword into the Spirit Sea, but he also planned to continue improving it. Such a peerless sword had become extremely powerful after the second seal. It could run amok in the world, as if it could destroy the world. If the third seal was successful, how strong would it be? Most importantly, once it went out of control, who could stop it? In the Dead Sea, the Taishu Taoist's expression changed slightly when he saw this. But before he could say anything, Lin Feng clapped his hands lightly, and rays of rainbow light flashed in the crack in space that led to the Great Thousand World. A white jade immortal mountain surrounded by purple smoke appeared in space. At the top of the immortal mountain, countless rays of light shone around the huge treasure tree that covered the sky. Rays of rainbow light swept up the white jade immortal mountain and arrived above Lin Feng's head. It was the jade capital immortal mountain and the profound heaven treasure tree. The eyes of the Taishu Taoist and Gautama Buddha flashed at the same time. Their gazes pierced through the layers of space and looked toward the dark sky time cave above the mysterious sky treasure tree on top of the mysterious sky treasure tree. Inside the dark sky time cave, under the small mysterious sky treasure tree, the sloppy old man, who had been playing chess by himself, seemed to feel the gazes of the two people. He finally stopped playing and raised his head. There was no spirit in his turbid, lifeless eyes, but his empty gaze met the Taishu Taoist and Gautama Buddha. The three of them looked at each other in the void for a moment, but it felt like billions of years had passed. At this moment, Lin Feng also raised his head and looked up. His gaze first fell on the cyclic purple qi outside Yujing Mountain, then on Yujing Mountain, and then on the mysterious sky treasure tree. In his sea of consciousness, the Taiji diagram formed by the Dharma and logos of the Taiji scripture kept spinning. Finally, Lin Feng's gaze also fell on the mysterious heaven timeless sky grotto heaven, looking at the sloppy old man playing chess, looking at the muddled Tianjiwa hiding in the tree, his gaze sweeping across every corner of the mysterious heaven timeless sky grotto heaven. His gaze finally turned back to the sky crushing sword that he had once again sealed. Thousands of thoughts raced through Lin Feng's mind. Many things that he had been puzzled about gradually had a reasonable explanation. He whistled and patted the top of his head. Streams of light flowed down from Yujing Mountain like silk ribbons and landed on Lin Feng's body. Lin Feng raised his eyes again and looked at the dark sky time cave at the top of the mysterious sky treasure tree. He could vaguely see the existence of light figures in the cave. After staring at those light figures for a while, a faint smile appeared on Lin Feng's face and his gaze became deep. He shook his head. The branches and leaves of the mysterious sky treasure tree swayed continuously, and rays of light shone. Along with Yujing Mountain and the cyclic purple qi, they gradually disappeared. However, the power that shook the void still made people feel that there was an extremely powerful existence there. The Taishu Taoist and Gautama Buddha watched this scene without saying anything. However, their eyes also shone with the light of enlightenment. Even with their state of mind, they could not keep calm. At this moment, as the great tides of the Dead Sea continued to roll and sweep, setting off terrifying waves that could destroy the heavens and the earth, within the blurry waters of the Dead Sea, two balls of light gradually lit up, becoming more and more dazzling. Sitting on the surface of the Dead Sea, the Taishu Taoist sighed and finally stood up. He took a step out of the Dead Sea and came to the side of the Haotian mirror. The light of the Haotian mirror suddenly became even more mysterious. Under the cover of the light, the treasure mirror disappeared without a trace, but it seemed to be everywhere, existing in all space and time. Lin Feng, the Taishu Taoist, and the Gautama Buddha stood in a triangular formation, and their gazes fell on the Dead Sea. The two increasingly dazzling balls of light in the Dead Sea finally rose up from the blurry Dead Sea. At this moment, the entire vast thousand domains shook again. Two faintly discernible figures appeared from the balls of light. The balls of light were like two doors, each leading to an unknown by Feng and an unknown path. At this moment, there was a figure on each of the two paths, walking unhurriedly from afar. They were about to pass through the doors and descend into the vast thousand domains. Chapter 1463. Without the suppression of the Taishu Taoist and the Gautama Buddha, Lin Feng's power clashed with the power of the Spirit Sea. Even though the Dead Sea was still silent, the waves became fiercer and fiercer. Two balls of light floated up like two doors. Each door seemed to lead to the endless unknown. There was a figure walking out of each door and appearing in the Dead Sea. They didn't have a deep feeling in the balls of light, but when the two figures walked out of the doors and descended into the vast thousand worlds, they could clearly feel the indescribable size of their bodies. It wasn't just the visual size but the feeling. It was as if they were facing two creation worlds. The Spirit Sea, the Dead Sea, and the creation world overlapped, but at this moment it gave people the feeling that there were 5 worlds overlapping at the same time. At this moment, the entire vast thousand worlds were in turmoil. In the Xian Sea, the dragons led by Shen Dragon King, regardless of their age or cultivation level, were shaking violently. Dragon roars sounded in the Xian Sea, shaking the 9 heavens. They gathered into a torrent and spread out of the Xian Sea. Rays of golden light flashed on Shen Dragon King's body. Together with the water of the Xian Sea, they created waves in the world. All the overlords of the dragon race, who had cultivated to the primordial true spirit level, had true spirit runes appear on their bodies. They vaguely stimulated their demonic energy and seemed to become stronger. The Purple Sea Dragon King and the other overlords of the dragon race all looked at Shen Dragon King. Shin Dragon King seemed to understand something. He took a deep breath and said, "It's the ancestor. It's His Majesty." He flew out of the sea and circled in the air. He lowered his head and said in a deep voice, "Welcome back, ancestor. Welcome back, His Majesty." The true spirit runes on the overlords of the dragon race flashed. They seemed to understand as well. They all flew up and gathered behind Shin Dragon King. They let out earth-shaking dragon roars. "Welcome back, ancestor. Welcome back, His Majesty." At the same time, on the spiritual abyss mountain of Infinite Mainland, the current clan leader of the spiritual divine monkey race, Great Sage Lingji, had a true spirit divine rune flickering on his forehead. His eyes were dull and he stood rooted to the ground as if he had been petrified. After a while, he came back to his senses. Slowly, he knelt on the ground. His blue eyes were filled with excitement. Behind him, a group of extreme spirit monkeys appeared. They didn't know what was going on. Holy Spirit King knelt on the mountaintop and screamed, "His Majesty the Extreme King is still alive. He has returned." The figures of the divine monkeys shuddered violently as they stood rooted to the ground, unable to recover from the shock. After a long while, they all burst into cheers and roars in unison. Great Sage Lingji let out a low roar, and all the monkeys regained their senses. They hurriedly knelt behind him and bowed towards the void. The Great Sage and Zhu Yen the Great Sage also appeared on the deep abyss mountain. Both of them were severely injured, and their qi, blood, and demonic powers were depleted. Zhu Yen, in particular, had lost an arm from the shoulder. But at this moment, there was a hint of excitement in their expressions. The Great Sage sighed, and his gaze became respectful. He slowly bowed towards the void and said, "Welcome back, His Majesty." Zhu Yen did the same and knelt on the ground. "Welcome back, His Majesty." Behind them, the Great Sage of Yu Cheng and the other experts of the primordial demon ape clan looked at each other, then at the sky. In the sky of the vast thousand domains, an extremely huge blue-eyed white ape gradually appeared. It was as if it stood above the 9 heavens, transcending the world. It was not in this world, and it was not there. It was difficult to guess its exact existence. The ape looked ordinary, but its aura was extremely terrifying. It stood in the void and was unfathomable. The tyrannical and majestic power combined with the ethereal aura. It was contradictory yet unified at the same time, and it made people's hearts palpitate. That face seemed to occupy the entire sky at this moment, coldly looking down on all living beings and the vast thousand domains. All of the primordial demon apes, whether they were wise or foolish, old or young, no longer had any doubts at this moment. They all knelt on the ground and bowed towards the shadow in the void that was gradually becoming real. "Welcome back, His Majesty." Violent ape howls rang out in the Spirit Abyss mountain range, spreading far and wide and shaking all directions. At this moment, not only the divine spiritual monkeys, but all of the primordial demon apes found it hard to suppress their excitement. Although they had always been one of the 3 strongest clans of the demon race, the primordial demon ape clan had always been below the Yudu clan and the dragon clan. They had been suppressed for too long, and now, the one who had reappeared in front of them was the Supreme Emperor who had led them to the peak in the past. Outside the Spirit Abyss Mountain, the current ancient Emperor Gu Jun and the 2 experts of the Mount Shu Sword Sect, Xian Longxing and Sword Venerable Tiangang, were all staring at the figure in the void that shook the vast thousand domains. Gu Jun's expression was solemn, but Xian Longxing and Sword Venerable Tiangang's expressions were extremely ugly. The founding ancestor of the Mount Shu Sword Sect, Sword Ancestor Ren Changmei, had died in the hands of Jihuang Xinyuan. That was one of the darkest moments in the history of the Mount Shu Sword Sect. It had forever engraved Mount Shu's name on a pillar of shame that could never be washed away. Now that the immortal Heaven Sword had been destroyed and the world had been reborn, Xian Longsheng and Sword Sovereign Celestial Dipper, felt dizzy upon seeing the extreme King Divine Abyss come back to life. Beside them, Shi Xingyun's expression was even uglier. She was as pale as a sheet of paper, and her eyes were dull. Below her, the huge dragon body was trembling uncontrollably. Shi Xingyun looked into the void and saw that there was another figure in the sky other than Jihuang Xinyuan. In terms of presence and power, it was on the same level as the blue-eyed white ape. However, in terms of appearance, it was even bigger than the blue-eyed white ape. It was a huge golden dragon that was so huge that it could not be any bigger. Its body was hidden in the thick, golden clouds. The dragon's head peeked out from the clouds. It was like a world of its own. Its eyes gazed at the colossal world. Billions of creatures in the colossal world felt like they were worshipping it. Apart from the primordial demon ape clan on the spiritual abyss mountain, everyone else, be it the human clan or the demon clan, could not help but feel a sense of subservience when facing this giant heavenly dragon, as if they were facing a supreme and majestic emperor. It was a kind of innate mental suppression. It was like in the mortal world, where the emperor wanted his subjects to die, and the subjects had no choice but to die. As the golden clouds spread out, the colossal world felt like it had returned to the ancient times. It returned to the ancient times when the dragon tribe ruled over the colossal world. The huge dragon and the blue-eyed white ape stood side by side. Their auras were vaguely rubbing against each other, neither giving way to the other. Demons in the Dharma-ending realm had a very close connection with the colossal world. Naturally, demons in the Middle Tribulation and Tribulation realm were even more so. For demons in the immortal realm, it could be said that they were infinitely close to turning the colossal world into their own. Whenever they made a move, the entire colossal world would react. There would definitely be battles between peak demons, or rather, there would be a battle sooner or later. One mountain couldn't accommodate two tigers. This was also one of the important reasons. Just one of them was enough to shake the colossal world. Now that two experts had gathered, it caused all living beings in the heaven origin world to tremble. Gu Jun, Xian Longsheng, Sword Sovereign Tiangang, and the others all had grim expressions. Jihuang Xinyuan, Jihuang Xuanshang. On the divine land, the hearts of all the human cultivators sank. Jihuang Xuanshang, Jihuang Xinyuan, and Yu Wang Tianhai were the three strongest demons in the history of the heaven origin world. Every one of them represented a magnificent era and brought countless hardships to the human cultivation world. Fortunately, after countless experts of the human race advanced wave after wave, they finally buried all of them. But now, Jihuang Xuanshang and Jihuang Xinyuan had actually reappeared in the world together. The huge impact they brought caused everyone to feel despair. Everyone looked nervously at the sky. At this moment, the spirit sea had become the focus of the entire world. The light that appeared in the colossal world was because the true forms of the demons were closely related to the colossal world. Their return to the colossal world naturally shook. And at this moment, at the border between the Spirit Sea and the Dead Sea, Lin Feng and the others were facing the two great demon emperors who had returned. Lin Feng looked to the left. There was a golden cloud there. Visually speaking, it didn't look very big, but its presence was unprecedented. Within the golden cloud, not even a scale or a claw could be seen. Only rays of golden light could be seen flowing through it. Countless rays of light gathered from all directions, supporting the golden cloud. The heavy and majestic power within it felt as if the entire colossal world was pressing down on one's heart. Looking at the golden cloud, a strange scene seemed to appear in front of Lin Feng's eyes. It was the distant primordial era when the colossal world was born. All life was born. Some were strong, some were weak, some were born with the power to summon the wind and rain, and some were so fragile that their lives were fleeting. And among them, there was an extremely powerful existence. He was like a ray of golden light that filled the world, as if he was the origin of the great Tao, the incarnation of the colossal world. the ancestor of the dragon race, the first and strongest living being in the world, the first primordial celestial dragon, first dragon Xian Shang. The first sacred emperor of the demon race, who had ruled over the colossal world for countless years, Juehuang Xuanshang. And on the right was a blue-eyed white ape who didn't seem to exist in this world. He stood above it, transcending all existences of time and space. The powerful concept and aura of power around him might not be as heavy and majestic as Juehuang Xuanshang's, but it was more ethereal and mysterious, and difficult to grasp. The extreme spirit-divine monkeys were not the strongest race among the immemorial demonic apes, but they had ascended to the highest position and ruled over heaven's origin world. All lives in heaven's origin world trembled before them, and together with Juehuang Xianshang, they were known as the three strongest great monsters in the history of heaven's origin world. Lin Feng looked at the two great demon emperors who had returned to the colossal world, and his gaze flickered. The two of them were known as the three strongest great demons together with Yuhuang Tianhai. Basically, they could also be known as the three strongest experts in the history of heaven's origin world. They had left behind countless legends in history, and today they had returned. Chapter 1464. When Juehuang Xianshang and Jihuang Xinyuan returned from the endless unknown, the entire world changed color. The clash between the Spirit Sea and the Dead Sea rippled even more violently, and the gray space they were in shattered, leaving only nothingness. The crack leading to the Great Thousand Worlds was completely torn open, showing a strange and dazzling state. A completely empty space appeared between the Great Thousand Worlds, the Spirit Sea world, and the Dead Sea world. There were no scenes, no objects, no life, no spirit energy, nothing. Even time and space were blurry, as if everything was in a state of chaos. Space lost its sense of direction and distance, and at the same time, it could not feel the flow of time. On the other hand, this expanse of chaos seemed to have been completely frozen, and it was unable to transform and regenerate all things in the world. After Juehuang Xianshang and Jihuang Xinyuan appeared, they first looked at each other. They were both peak great demons in the immortal realm, and their true forms were closely connected to the Great Thousand Worlds, so they could clearly feel each other's level and existence. A gaze seemed to shoot out from the golden clouds, sizing up Jihuang Xinyuan. Then, a low and dignified voice said, "Divine Spirit Monkey?" Jihuang Xinyuan stood in the chaos, the corners of his lips twitching slightly, as if he was smiling. "First Dragon Xianshang, I have long heard of your name. It's a pity that I can only see you today." After a brief conversation, the two great demon beasts shut their mouths. Their attention was now on the other side. There, the Taishu Taoist stood side by side with the Haotian mirror, Lin Feng stood side by side with the Bell of Creation, and on the other side stood the Buddha. And beside Lin Feng, in the vortex formed by the Dead Sea and the Spirit Sea, there was a vicious light that grew brighter and brighter, its aura becoming more and more ominous. In the space above Lin Feng's head, there was a formless existence, and the obscure aura it gave off caught the attention of the two great demon emperors. The gaze of the golden dragon cloud first fell on the Taishu Taoist and the Haotian mirror. He did not speak, but the aura he gave off was extremely cold. The Taishu Taoist's expression was indifferent, and his gaze was as calm as water when he met Ultimate Emperor Xianshang's gaze. Juehuang Xuanshang stared at the Taishu Taoist for a moment, then turned to look at the Buddha and Lin Feng. His gaze flashed past the Buddha, and finally landed on Lin Feng. The golden dragon cloud suddenly rippled, and rays of golden light filled the void, covering the three realms. Suddenly, a ball of light wriggled in his Spirit Sea and turned into a streak of light, disappearing without a trace. In front of Juehuang Xianshang, there was a flash of light. In the end, it gathered together to form a broken dragon body. There was no lower half of its body, and there was a black hole on its forehead. No flesh, blood, or bones could be seen in that black hole. It was completely empty. It was the Origin Dragon King's broken body, and at that moment, it was enveloped by Zhuohuang Xian Shang's dragon might and auspicious clouds. Spots of light actually appeared on the surface of the broken body, and the spots of light gathered together to form a faint afterimage. The afterimage was like a light smoke, constantly drifting in the air, as if it could dissipate at any time. A stuttering voice came from the afterimage. My Emperor, there was no need for Zhuohuang Xian Shang to finish speaking. With just a thought, he understood everything. The Origin Dragon King's broken soul was drifting in the air, and it gradually began to dissipate. Zhuohuang Xian Shang's face was expressionless as he looked at the Spirit Sea. The light in the Spirit Sea surged, and he guided it into the dragon might and auspicious clouds. He actually managed to stabilize the Origin Dragon King's broken soul. Lin Feng put his hands behind his back and looked calmly at Zhuohuang Xian Shang. Zhuohuang Xian Shang looked coldly at Lin Feng, then turned his gaze back to the Taishu Taoist. Then, a vast golden sea of clouds suddenly spread out and enveloped the Taishu Taoist. In the ancient era, the Taishu Taoist and the Taishu Taoist had worked together to send Zhuohuang Xian Shang to death. After that, the Taishu Taoist had entered the Dead Sea, and all these years, he had suppressed Zhuohuang Xian Shang and prevented him from returning. The two of them had been enemies for countless years. When Zhuohuang Xian Shang moved, everyone present felt as if the sky was falling and the earth was shattering. The entire great thousand worlds seemed to be toppling at that moment. The Taishu Taoist knew the dragon ancestor very well. The first time the two of them had fought was in the last years of the ancient era. He stood in the air and pointed at the sky. Suddenly, countless Haotian mirrors appeared in the billions of spacetime, and then beams of mirror light descended. The surface of the Taishu Taoist's body flashed, and a Taishu Nine Heavens imperial court appeared above his head. There were layers inside, turning into 9 huge balls of light that illuminated the void. They were mysterious and indescribable, and every step they took seemed to lead to the 9 heavens. Under the reflection of the Haotian mirror, huge illusory balls of light surged between heaven and earth. They seemed to be everywhere, located in countless spacetime, and there were countless Taishu Nine Heavens imperial court. The Taishu mysterious light that covered the Taishu Nine Heavens imperial court merged with the light of the Haotian mirror, causing the chaos that everyone was in to become lively. It was as if many paths to heaven had appeared at the same time, and they all pointed to the same existence. They pointed to the only truth, the only eternity, the only correct existence, the foundation of the great Tao of heaven and earth, the core of the creation of the great thousand world. As such a powerful and mysterious power fluctuated, the light of the Haotian mirror covered the heavens. The space-time of the entire great thousand worlds seemed to slow down at that moment, as if it was about to be frozen. But of course, this did not include Zhuohuang Xian Shang. He was one of the first living beings to be born when the heavens and earth were first formed. He evolved and grew with the creation of the great thousand worlds, and became the most powerful being of his generation. The golden dragon might auspicious clouds suddenly dispersed, turning into a golden rain of light that covered countless spacetime, blocking the light of the Haotian mirror that the Taishu Taoist had imbued with dermic powers. An incomparably huge golden heavenly dragon finally appeared from the scattered golden sea of cloud. As its body coiled, it seemed to occupy the entire great thousand world. Just its head alone seemed to fill up the entire universe. As the scales on its body opened and closed, its majestic qi and blood could no longer be described as hot. It was like the chaotic qi of ancient times. Just the qi and blood of its physical body seemed to be able to annihilate and dispel countless strong existences. An earth-shattering roar resounded through the entire great heaven primordial world. Zhuohuang Xian Shang clawed at the Taishu Taoist and the Haotian mirror. As rays of golden light flashed, the light and shadows of the Haotian mirror and the great void nine heavens imperial court dissipated. This claw accurately grabbed at the Taishu Taoist himself, the Haotian mirror that was gradually becoming one with the various world. There were no unnecessary changes, no profound principles or state. However, when the simple claw descended, it dissolved all the complicated phenomena into nothingness. If there was only one word to describe it, it would be power. Apart from power, there was still power. It was so strong that it could distort and crush thousands of laws. It was like the origin of the Great Path, turning everything complicated into simple. The Taishu Taoist looked at this scene calmly. He pointed at the great void nine heavens imperial court above his head and pointed casually. The imperial court that led to the nine heavens seemed to become one at this moment. Then, above the mysterious and inexplicable ninth heaven imperial court, which seemed to be above the various worlds, some kind of existence was born. 9 was the extreme of numbers, but it also had the meaning of infinity. Above the heavens was the Great Path. The Great Path was in the sky, endless and mysterious. Above the 9 heavens imperial court, the 10th heaven imperial court, was where the Great Path was. The 10th heaven imperial court, above heaven. From above the 9 heavens, there seemed to be an invisible air current descending. It was incredibly profound and filled with endless wonders. It supported the light of the Haotian mirror. The Haotian mirror also shone brightly at that moment. The light that was everywhere gathered into a single line. That line of light was so dazzling that it was as if everything in the world had disappeared, leaving behind only that line of light. The invisible air current fused with the light of the Haotian mirror and went to meet Zhuohuang Xianshang. Both sides clashed violently in the chaotic realms. This collision caused the entire great thousand realms to tremble. In fact, even the spirit seas and the whirlpools in the Dead Sea that were clashing against each other trembled. And while the great thousand realms in heaven primal world were in turmoil, the worlds outside the great thousand realms, the medium realms, and the foreign dimensions were also affected. Some of the more fragile and decaying medium realms and foreign dimensions actually began to deteriorate even faster under the mysterious and powerful tremors. They swiftly walked towards their doom and were destroyed in the endless space. Jihuang Xinyuan's gaze also landed on the Haotian mirror at that moment. At the same time, he watched the Taishu Taoist cast the above heaven art. His azure blue eyes flashed with an indecipherable luster. During the Middle Era, when Qi Yang had used the power of the Netherworld Sea and the Haotian mirror to send him to destruction, Jihuang Xinyuan was not unfamiliar with the Haotian mirror or the above heaven art. As for the Taishu Taoist, although he had never met him face to face, he naturally had some understanding of this founding master of the Taishu Temple and the top expert in the history of the human cultivation world. After staring at the Taishu Taoist and the Haotian mirror for a while, Jihuang Xinyuan's gaze suddenly turned to Lin Feng and he said with a smile, "I want to kill him. Will you intervene?" He pointed a finger, but it was not at the Taishu Taoist, but at the Gautama Buddha. Lin Feng laughed and clapped his hands when he heard that. Heavenly eyes and heavenly ears. You live up to your reputation. Perhaps he did not know the specific reason, but he could sense that the atmosphere between Lin Feng and the Gautama Buddha was not very harmonious. He could even sense that Lin Feng and the Gautama Buddha had just exchanged blows. At the level of Lin Feng and Gautama Buddha's abilities and mana, it is already extremely difficult for others to find out specific information like this. However, when the other party was an immortal realm extreme spiritual monkey, one of the 3 strongest demons in the history of Heaven Yuan, Jihuang Xinyuan, all of this was as easy as looking at palm lines. The Gautama Buddha's expression was calm and unperturbed. Silently, he looked at Jihuang Xinyuan. The extreme king's divine abyss let out a long howl, and in a flash, appeared in front of Gautama Buddha. Green lotuses bloomed under Gautama Buddha's feet, and the distance between them increased. Endless golden Saha flowers bloomed, and Gautama Buddha's figure disappeared. All Jihuang Xinyuan could see was a golden sea of flowers. However, the giant monkey bared its teeth and leaped out of the sea of Saha flowers, once again appearing in front of Gautama Buddha. Chapter 1465. Gautama could not help but shake his head when he saw Jihuang Xinyuan jump out of the Saha flower sea and arrive before him. He did not use the 3 lives karma curse as it was not very effective. At Jihuang Xinyuan's level, the spiritual divine monkey race's heavenly ear and heavenly eye divine abilities had reached a relatively high level. They could hear the past and see the future. Their understanding of all things had reached a relatively high level. Even if it was not as profound as Buddha's 3 lives karma curse or Lin Feng's Tao fruit, it was still an extremely high level of attainment. The karmic entanglement of the mortal world was of limited use to Jihuang Xinyuan. It was difficult to cause enough trouble for this great demon. In comparison, the karmic entanglement was more effective against Jiuhuang Xuanshang. Therefore, Gautama did not hesitate at all. He pushed his palm towards Jihuang Xinyuan. With a single push, all laws ceased to exist and the world became empty. Vairocana palm. The extreme king's divine abyss laughed heartily and transformed into its true form. Its furry claws swiped at the Buddha's palm. The snow-white monkey fur stood on end. One strand was like a pillar that could hold up the heavens. It was as thick as a mountain and extended into the void. The monkey fur stood on end. It was as hard as diamond. Waves of demonic aura gushed out from Jihuang Xinyuan's pores. They were as black as ink infused with the snow-white monkey fur, turning into a hazy gray. The monkey claw became larger and larger after this action, and it was still growing. In an instant it covered the entire universe. Gautama sat in the void. He was as small as a speck of dust, but also as huge as the great thousand world. But at this moment, when Jihuang Xinyuan's claw came down, it was as if he wanted to grab Buddha in his hand. The terrifying physical strength that could grab the great thousand worlds erupted at this moment. It made Jihuang Xinyuan's physical body so terrifying that it could rival Jiuhuang Xuanshang's. This was because Jiuhuang Xuanshang was blessed by the heavens and was too special. Under normal circumstances, the extreme spirit divine monkey that used the great spirit king hand could basically wrestle with a primordial celestial dragon of the same realm. Even so, when Jihuang Xinyuan's claw came down, the Gautama Buddha's palm that could turn everything into nothingness was unable to suppress it. He could only watch as the huge gray claw continued to grab him. The ancestral Buddha stood up and pointed towards the heavens and earth. The power of Rulai's palm burst forth completely, clashing head-on with Jihuang Xinyuan's great spirit king palm. The extreme emperor's divine abyss's blue eyes flashed as he grinned. Demonic chi suddenly surged from his body and rose into the air, turning into a blue cloud that enveloped his snow-white body. 2 worlds could be vaguely seen within the deep blue demonic mist. On one side was the Divine Land, on the other side was the Tianhuang vast land. The majestic sector was projected here. Above the colossal world, a figure of light was faintly discernible. Its legs were spread apart, with one foot on the vast land of the Divine Continent and the other on the vast Tianhuang mainland. Then, an earth-shattering ape roar rang out. In the chaos, the glazed Buddha light that filled the sky shattered like porcelain. A golden light was sent flying back, streaking across the sky as if it was about to fall from the void. The majestic Buddha light lit up again, and the sky-reaching pagoda reappeared. The future glazed Buddha Lord sat on the top of the pagoda. Because they had been attacked by Lin Feng and the Book of Destruction, the sky-reaching pagoda and the future glazed Buddha Lord still had Buddha light on their bodies, but they seemed to be covered in dust. However, after Jiuhuang Xuanshang and Jihuang Xinyuan appeared from the Dead Sea, Lin Feng no longer made things difficult for them. At this moment, although his aura was much weaker, He still flew up and manifested the Vairocana light world of the east, catching the falling Gautama Buddha. The glazed eastern world continued to shatter, and the light on the sky reaching pagoda and the future glazed Buddha Lord grew dimmer. Gautama Buddha Lord landed on the left of the future glazed Buddha Lord. He pointed to the sky with one hand and touched the top of the sky reaching pagoda with the other. The future glazed Buddha Lord's 48,000 hands joined together. Countless lights shone on the empty spot on his right, and they landed on it. They emitted the concept of infinite possibilities and infinite power. The three worlds merged, and the grand will expanded. The glazed eastern world finally became bright again, and the boundless Buddhist kingdom evolved, as if it was a sector. But the extreme emperor's divine abyss grand spirit king hand continued to grab at the Vairocana world of the east, as if it were trying to grab a whole world. The terrifying claws continued to increase their strength, and the specks of light in the eastern Vairocana world continued to scatter like dust. Instantly, cracks appeared on the Vairocana world of the east. In the pure land of Buddhism, the leaves of the Shura treasure tree withered, and the light of the Buddhas fell, their golden bodies decaying. On the 28,000 zhang tall sky reaching pagoda, cracks appeared in the center of the pagoda. On the top of the pagoda, cracks also appeared on the body of the future glazed Buddha Lord, who was in the center. The majestic Buddhist light on the right seemed to have lost its power at this moment, and it was continuously being obliterated. The Buddha light around Gautama Buddha Lord, who was on the left of the pagoda, also gradually dimmed. Gautama Buddha Lord looked at Jihuang Xinyuan, and his gaze was as calm as water. The 5 blessed lands above his head merged into the Buddhist kingdom and disappeared. However, the images of the 5 wisdom kings started burning. The so-called wisdom kings were the incarnations of the teachings of the 5 Buddha Lords. The incarnations of the teachings were when the Buddhas enlightened the people of the world, manifesting the wondrous techniques so that the people of the world could comprehend and seek peace and freedom. When they reached the ultimate bliss, there would always be people with deep greed, hatred, and hatred. They were stubborn, and there were even evil and unorthodox techniques that made it difficult for the people of the world to reach the nirvana realm. At this time, the Buddhas that represented the 5 great wisdom kings would glare angrily, and they would show the incarnations of the wisdom kings to subdue the greed, hatred, and hatred. The incarnations of the wisdom kings used their supreme power to teach the evil and stubborn people to follow the teachings of the Buddha Lords. Hence, it was called the incarnations of the teachings. It was also because of this that the wisdom kings were possessed by the flames of fury, and the will to subdue destruction was born. The Buddhist sect had a divine ability called the fury of the wisdom kings, and it formed real flames. However, it was only a small path in the eyes of the Buddhist Dharma. At this moment, when Gautama Buddha manifested the images of the 5 great wisdom kings, the flames of fury were not real flames, but they were even more terrifying. At this moment, the 5 great wisdom kings, the wisdom kings of great wisdom, the wisdom kings of Junshali, the wisdom kings of Trailokaya Vijaya, and the wisdom kings of Vajrapani in the center of Gautama Buddha's head spontaneously combusted, and they turned into colorless illusory flames. They passed through the shattered world of the eastern Vairocana and surged towards Jihuang Xinyuan. Jihuang Xinyuan's azure blue eyes flickered slightly, and the strength of his hands slowed down a little, but his body started to become illusory. His body seemed to have leaped a little. However, from the visual effect, his body still did not move, and his feet seemed to be rooted in the primal chaos, still reaching out to grab the pure land of the Buddhist nation. However, in the eyes of Gautama Buddha, he could feel that his opponent seemed to have leaped out of the boundless world. The flames of fury formed by the 5 great wisdom kings all missed, and it was difficult to hurt this great demon. Generally speaking, when a Buddha manifests the flames of fury of the wisdom kings, as long as the other party has the poisonous thoughts of greed, anger, and delusion, it will draw the fire to itself, and it will be difficult to avoid and extinguish. Since it is the flames of fury of the Buddha, it is also the enemy's own heart fire, arising from the bottom of one's heart. If the poisonous thoughts are not extinguished, the flames of fury cannot be extinguished. However, with Ji Huang Xinyuan leaping on the spot, the flames of fury formed by the 5 great wisdom kings were immediately unable to touch his body, and it was difficult to hurt him. During this process, Ji Huang Xinyuan still did not relax his attack. Although his strength was slightly reduced, his body did not move, and the great spirit king's hand did not loosen. In that instant it gave rise to an extremely contradictory feeling. Ji Huang Xinyuan seemed to have split into 2, one dodging the flames of fury of the wisdom kings, and the other continuing to attack. However, the flames of fury of the wisdom kings were evaded just like that, and it was difficult to cause any damage to Ji Huang Xinyuan, who continued to attack. Gautama Buddha looked at Ji Huang Xinyuan and sighed softly. He stood up from the sky reaching Buddha Pagoda and tapped with his finger. The sky reaching Buddha Pagoda beneath his feet and the future constellation Glaze Buddha Lord beside him both transformed into flowing light and were kept away by his palm. In the pure land of Buddhism, the remnant light was instantly extinguished, returning to nirvana. The eruption of power caused Ji Huang Xinyuan's hand to loosen slightly. After that, the Buddha Lord strode out, stepping on the chaos. Numerous green lotuses appeared beneath his feet as he fled into the distance. Because he had evaded the flames of fury of the wisdom kings, Ji Huang Xinyuan's attack slowed down a little, and the Buddha Lord jumped out of his palm. However, he didn't mind it and grinned. Before him, there was nothing that could be compared to teleportation. Since ancient times, Ji Huang Xinyuan's movement arts were the number 1 in the heaven primal world. Even Zhu Huang Xuanshang and Yu Wang Tianhai weren't his match in this aspect. The gigantic blue-eyed white ape leaped lightly in the chaos once more, catching up to the Buddha Lord. That gigantic palm of his continued pressing down on the Buddha Lord. But at this moment, Ji Huang Xinyuan's eyes suddenly flashed. A powerful and vast fluctuation of magic energy surged in the chaos. Streams of qi of destruction that could cause all things to decay swept towards Ji Huang Xinyuan. Ji Huang Xinyuan's figure trembled slightly. The azure demonic mist around him expanded, blocking the incoming qi of destruction. And at this moment, a figure appeared before him. Boundless light gathered together, transforming into a gigantic palm that clashed against Ji Huang Xinyuan's grand spirit king palm in the chaos. Violent shock waves radiated outwards, shaking the creation of the great Kiliacosm. The newcomer was none other than Lin Feng. Ji Huang Xinyuan looked at him. His gaze flickered, but his expression didn't change. In the end, you still couldn't resist making a move? Lin Feng smiled faintly. It's nothing. I can't resist. I'm not interested in the outcome of your battle with fellow Taoist Relay. I'm only interested in sparring with you. The corners of his lips curled up, and his smile became even more obvious. You might not know this, but I was the one who suggested fellow Taoist Great Void and fellow Taoist Relay to release their suppression, allowing the 2 of you to return to the Great Kiliacosm. Chapter 1466. Lin Feng's expression was calm, but Ji Huang Xinyuan could not help but raise his eyebrows when he heard what he said. Even with his all-seeing eyes and all-hearing ability, he did not expect such an outcome. Lin Feng had fought with the Gautama Buddha before, and because of this, the Taishu Taoist could not suppress him alone. As a result, he and Zhu Huang Xuanshang had to return. Therefore, although Ji Huang Xinyuan did not know what Lin Feng was thinking, he could not tell if Lin Feng was a friend or foe. If Lin Feng was hostile, he could have stopped fighting and let the Gautama Buddha return to the Dead Sea to suppress him. He could even have helped to suppress him. However, Lin Feng did not do that. Under the circumstances, dealing with the Taishu Taoist, the Haotian Mirror, and the Gautama Buddha first was undoubtedly the right choice. However, the reason why Lin Feng allowed the two great demon emperors to return to the vast thousand domains was because he wanted to fight them. This was out of Jihuang Xinyuan's expectations. However, Jihuang Xinyuan was not afraid. He looked at Lin Feng and grinned. "Oh, you're quite ambitious. Let's fight then." As he spoke, Jihuang Xinyuan's figure suddenly split into two light shadows. One of the shadows continued to wrestle with Lin Feng at this moment, while the other shadow quickly attacked towards the other side. However, its target was not the Gautama Buddha or Lin Feng, but the whirlpool where the power of the Spirit Sea and the Dead Sea converged, where the sky-crushing sword was. As his figure moved, the two figures' auras and power were indistinguishable. At this moment, they seemed to be real at the same time. It was extremely mysterious. Lin Feng released his mystic ability and dermic power. He could sense that Lin Feng was a top human expert on the same level as the Taishu Taoist and the Gautama Buddha. Although the Book of Destruction looked like a Mahayana-grade treasure, it did not seem to be inferior to the Haotian mirror. In addition, there was an existence hidden in the void that made him feel apprehensive. Although Jihuang Xinyuan was arrogant, he could tell that this unfamiliar purple-robed young man in front of him had the highest overall strength among the three human race powerhouses present. Furthermore, the Extreme Emperor's divine abyss was able to observe heaven and earth. The moment he returned to the universe and saw the vortex where the Sky Destroyer was, he could vaguely tell that the treasure that was being refined once again belonged to Lin Feng. Coupled with this magic treasure, Lin Feng's strength had reached a shocking level. It was fine if Lin Feng didn't participate in the battle, but once he did, the heaven-punishing sword, which seemed like it wouldn't be used, would actually be the greatest variable and threat. Lin Feng himself, the Book of Destruction, the Taishu Taoist, the Haotian Mirror, and Gautama Buddha. His current strength was basically fixed, and the possibility of a sudden change was very small. At the intersection of the spiritual sea and the Dead Sea, the seemingly dormant heaven-punishing sword in the whirlpool became brighter and brighter, and its sword intent became fiercer and fiercer. It was obvious that it was constantly improving. Even peak experts like Jihuang Xinyuan and Zhuohuang Xianshang were taken aback by this brutal and ruthless power concept. Moreover, it was still rising. Since Lin Feng was participating in the battle, the first thing Jihuang Xinyuan decided to do was to stop the heaven-punishing sword's third sacrificial offering and find an opportunity to destroy it. Seeing this, Lin Feng's eyes narrowed and the smile on his face grew wider. He reached out with his palm. A Dao fruit appeared in his palm. That profound point created all Dao, encompassing all things, ending everything. This point was difficult to describe, but it seemed to be above all existences. It wasn't above direction, but above reason. The power of Lin Feng's Dao fruit manifested, and Jihuang Xinyuan immediately felt his body slow down. The two light figures that he had split into actually merged back together. The figure that had rushed to the whirlpool where the heaven-punishing sword was disappeared at this moment, as if it had never existed. Jihuang Xinyuan's heart trembled slightly. Then, he saw the Book of Destruction close with a bang, and waves of destructive aura descended like smoke. At the same time, as Lin Feng's fingers opened and closed, the Taiji 1 Yuan treasure light suddenly spread out. 296 billion streams of light enveloped the void, and they also enveloped Jihuang Xinyuan. For a moment, even the Extreme Emperor's divine abyss felt like there was no way out of this place. A ferocious glint flashed in his azure blue eyes. His figure suddenly leaped up, avoiding the Taiji 1 Yuan treasure light and the destructive aura of the Book of Destruction. Lin Feng didn't show mercy. He pointed with his finger, and an eternal light of calamity shot out, targeting Jihuang Xinyuan. Jihuang Xinyuan smiled. As blue demonic mist circulated around his body, his figure seemed to transcend this world. From a certain point of view, it was actually somewhat similar to Lin Feng's Dao fruit. The eternal light of calamity, which could transform all things into life and death, was also avoided by Jihuang Xinyuan at this moment. Under the blue demonic mist, Jihuang Xinyuan seemed to distort the existence of the great Tao in this world. In the next moment, Jihuang Xinyuan used extreme agility again, and his figure pounced toward Lin Feng. Lin Feng used his supernatural power, and the Taiji Yuan treasure light enveloped the world. At this moment, Jihuang Xinyuan's azure blue eyes suddenly turned blood-red. Blood-red light gushed out, and even the blue demonic mist around him turned into a red mist. Jihuang Xinyuan stretched out his claws, sweeping up the red mist and attacking Lin Feng. The ethereal and violent power merged into one, and at this moment, it was as if a large world was crushing toward Lin Feng. Not only was it heavy, but it was also unavoidable. Lin Feng's expression didn't change. The Taiji Yuan treasure light became even more vast, and 296 billion light streams crisscrossed in the void like a net, but they also seemed to converge into one point, blocking Jihuang Xinyuan's path. Under the corruption of the red mist of light, even Lin Feng's Taiji Yuan treasure light at this moment lost its miraculous aspect, starting to break apart one by one. However, at the same time, the destructive qi of the Book of Destruction poured down on Jihuang Xinyuan's head like a torrential rain. Under the corrosion of this destructive energy, the red mist dimmed slightly. The Taiji Yuan treasure light immediately switched from defense to offense, resisting the red mist. Jihuang Xinyuan grinned slightly, revealing his sharp fangs, and let out a shrill howl that shook the heaven yuan. His claws were wrapped in the red mist, and he locked Lin Feng in the middle. His arms shook together, as if he was shaking the pillars of the sky. Being shaken like that, the heaven yuan great world also began to shake. The divine land, infinite mainland, and thousands of human and demon cultivators felt dizzy at this moment. The world in front of them was still the same, but their minds were already in chaos. The scenery of the world didn't change, but everyone felt as if the world was collapsing and the world was turning upside down. Some cultivators and demons with lower cultivation levels couldn't adapt to the sudden change in the flow of spirit qi in heaven and earth, and some even suffered from qi deviation. Apart from the spiritual sea and the dead sea that were right in front of him, the remaining star sea, sky sea, paradise sea, nether sea, and profound sea were also surging with monstrous wave. Lin Feng formed a hand seal with both hands, and the Taiji Yuan treasure light spread out, and then a purple aura appeared. The purple aura was the universal universe source qi, which was also known as the universal universe purple aura. At this moment, the myriad source qi of the great heavenly cycle combined with Lin Feng's Taiji Yuan treasure light and then combined to form a brand new pale white cloud energy. Tai Chi Universal Universe Source Qi. The 296 billion Tai Chi Universal Universe Source Qi circulated around Lin Feng's body, and the destructive qi of the Book of Destruction descended and combined with it. Together, they stabilized the chaotic spacetime they were in, preventing the extreme king abyss from shaking. The destructive qi of the Book of Destruction could destroy anything, but at this moment it complemented the Tai Chi Universal Universe Source Qi. Together, they formed a strong line of defense that was impregnable. At the same time, the heavenly Tao chant sounded, and the black and white divine light of creation burst out from Lin Feng's body. Rays of divine light covered the chaos, and countless divine runes were engraved in the void. Jihuang Xinyuan's blood-red eyes became even colder. On his body, within the blood-red light, large amounts of starlight suddenly appeared. Countless stars revolved around Jihuang Xinyuan at this moment. It looked like a blood-red starry sky, with millions of stars flashing and dying. Facing the current Jihuang Xinyuan, Lin Feng even had an illusion that he was in the desolate ancient star sea, a blood-red desolate ancient star sea. Ha! Lin Feng's expression changed. With a soft shout, his own fruit of Tao also appeared in the void. Once the Tao fruit appeared, everything returned to nothingness, leaving only that mysterious point. The Tai Chi Universal Universe Source Chi formed by Lin Feng's Dharma power, along with the destructive Chi of the Book of Destruction, his Tao fruit, and the divine light of creation, continued to block the changes in Jihuang Xinyuan's mystique power. Jihuang Xinyuan stared at Lin Feng with his blood-red eyes. The battle between the two sides fell into a stalemate. It seemed like it was going to be a protracted battle. However, at this moment, Lin Feng smiled slightly. He formed a hand seal with one hand and pointed at the void above his head with the other hand. There, in the boundless chaos, it seemed like an independent space-time suddenly appeared. In the space-time, a white jade immortal mountain descended. On the top of the mountain, the mysterious sky treasure tree's branches and leaves swayed and shone brightly. At the top of the tree, in the mysterious sky-time light grotto heaven, an illusory figure suddenly appeared. It was Lin Feng's image. Lin Feng walked all the way to the small mysterious sky treasure tree in the grotto heaven and sat cross-legged opposite the sloppy old man's chessboard. The sloppy old man's eyes were still empty and lifeless. His expression was dull and numb. However, he had stopped playing alone. His gaze was no longer on the chessboard. His lifeless eyes were looking at Lin Feng in front of him. Lin Feng smiled calmly. He did not look at the sloppy old man. Instead, he looked up at the sky. Inside the mysterious sky-time light grotto heaven, there seemed to be formless light shadows moving. Previously, Lin Feng had not been able to see them clearly. However, at this moment, he gradually saw the scene inside clearly. Lin Feng smiled and reached out his hand. His fingers gently tapped on the chessboard. From today onwards, this chess game will be called the Mysterious Sky Game. As he tapped on the chessboard, the seemingly ordinary chessboard surged with rays of light and flew out of the mysterious sky-time light grotto heaven. Chapter 1467. Within the Xiantian time light paradise, streaks of light flew up from the chessboard. The black and white chess pieces remained on the chessboard, but the crisscrossing lines on the chessboard emitted a faint light that shot into the sky. Streaks of light flowed out of the Xiantian time light paradise and landed in the chaotic spacetime. It was as if the entire world had turned into a chessboard. Enveloped by this chessboard, Jihuang Xinyuan suddenly felt as if he had completely left the great heaven primordial world, as if he had fallen into another greater thousand world. He frowned and his blood-red eyes flickered slightly. Then, he leapt up from where he stood. Just like how he had dodged the Buddha's wisdom king's fury, he twisted the great Tao and Dharma as he faced off against Lin Feng. At the same time, his body seemed to have left the world. But as he leapt up, layers of light shadows suddenly appeared on the Xiantian game above his head. They landed on the chessboard and turned into glowing chess pieces. These chess pieces rapidly moved, placing and lifting the pieces. The originally flat chessboard suddenly shook violently. This shake vaguely caused Jihuang Xinyuan's ultimate agility to disappear. Jihuang Xinyuan's eyes exploded with a shocking light. He roared at the sky, and the blood-red fog around him rapidly spread out as he charged towards the Xiantian game. The glowing chess pieces on the Xiantian game kept moving. As they moved, they froze the blood-red fog in place, and as they lifted the pieces, they dissipated the fog. Although the blood-red fog kept surging out, the Xiantian game was also constantly dispelling it. At the same time, Lin Feng had already switched from defense to offense. He clasped his hands together, and the Book of Destruction's powerful aura of destruction fused with the Tai Chi myriad Chi. Its Tao fruit transformed into the eternal calamity light and shot towards Jihuang Xinyuan. The fused aura of destruction and the Tai Chi myriad Chi strengthened the eternal calamity light and shot towards Jihuang Xinyuan together. Jihuang Xinyuan's expression was solemn. As the fog around him surged, he leapt up again. But as expected, the Xiantian game's transformation actually froze his body once more, making it impossible for him to dodge. He could only face the eternal calamity light head-on. Jihuang Xinyuan's eyes flashed as he looked up at the Xiantian game. The power isn't that great, but the concept is quite profound. Unable to dodge, the extreme Emperor Divine Abyss had no choice but to gather its demonic energy and form a crimson cocoon around itself to block Lin Feng's attack. The eternal calamity light continuously eroded the blood cocoon and forced it back, forcing Jihuang Xinyuan into the Xiantian world. The unparalleled demonic emperor was also mentally prepared for this. As soon as he entered the fray, he let out a roar that shook the entire 7 seas and great 1,000 worlds. The blood cocoon around him turned into a boundless blood-red light that expanded wildly. Violent energy swept through spacetime, shattering all things in its path. Even the chess pieces on the Xiantian game that were close to the extreme emperor's divine abyss were scattered everywhere. Several cracks appeared on the surface of the chessboard, with the extreme emperor's divine abyss at the center. Within the Xiantian time grotto heaven, the sloppy old man stared blankly at the chessboard. The chessboard itself was shaking violently. But before Jihuang Xinyuan could continue wreaking havoc, Lin Feng appeared above the Xiantian game with the Book of Destruction. Silently, he looked down at Jihuang Xinyuan, who had fallen into the game. Of course, Lin Feng wasn't going to sit back and watch the extreme Emperor Divine Abyss escape the Xiantian Bureau. He raised the Book of Destruction and flipped through its pages, sending streams of destructive energy into the chessboard. The extreme King's Divine Abyss frowned. The blood-red light around its body was being weakened by the destructive energy. At the same time, the Xiantian game rearranged itself and attacked the extreme emperor together with the Book of Destruction. The fruit of Tao appeared in front of Lin Feng once again. With a thought, the profound point suddenly started to change and strengthen the Xiantian game. The Xiantian game became more and more profound, and the chessboard changed in a myriad of ways. It was clearly a complicated and rapid change, but at this moment, it gave off a feeling of the vicissitudes of time, and the birth of creation. The changes happened in an instant, but at this moment it felt like an eternity. As the changes happened, the Xiantian game continued to spread through the chaotic spacetime, gradually filling up the entire chaotic realm. Its borders connected to the Dead Sea, the Spirit Sea, and the great 1,000 realms of the Heaven Primal World. It actually fused the 3 realms into one. But Jihuang Xinyuan, who was inside the Xiantian game, still felt like he was isolated from the Heaven Primal World. The Tai Chi myriad Qi around Lin Feng's body surged, and then he activated the Book of Collapse, combining it with the Qi of Destruction. It turned into streams of mysterious energy that fell towards the extreme Emperor's divine abyss, completely suppressing him into the Xiantian matrix. The scene in front of Jihuang Xinyuan suddenly changed. He seemed to suddenly become small, like a chess piece on the chessboard. In the outside world, the Buddha, the Taishu Taoist, Jiuhuang Xianshang, the Grand Taoist Lord, and the others saw light flash, and Jihuang Xinyuan's figure suddenly shrank. Then, he was swept up by the Xiantian game, turned into a stream of light, and returned to the Xiantian paradise at the peak of Jade Capital Mountain. In the paradise, a stream of light flew down from the sky at the foot of the small Xiantian treasure tree and landed on the chessboard. Soon after, Lin Feng also entered the Xiantian paradise with the Book of Destruction. He sat cross-legged in the air and hovered above the chessboard. The Book of Destruction kept flipping in front of Lin Feng, while Lin Feng himself formed hand seals. The Tai Chi source Qi and the destructive energy fused together and strengthened the Xiantian game. At this moment, within the Xiantian game, Jihuang Xinyuan's eyes were so cold that they almost froze. But he was suppressed by Lin Feng, the Book of Destruction, and the Xiantian game. Streams of profound air kept reducing the blood-red fog around him. The stars in the fog that seemed like the starry sky of the blood-red universe also dimmed. When the others saw this, they were quite shocked. The great demon that Lin Feng was suppressing was not an ordinary demon. It was one of the three famous great demon sovereigns in the history of the great heaven primordial world: Extreme Demon Sovereign, Divine Abyss Extreme Spirit. The rise of the ancient epoch had brought endless disasters to the divine land. The rise and fall of the ancient epoch had lasted until the end of the middle epoch. Among the three great demon sovereigns, the Extreme Demon Sovereign was publicly recognized as the strongest in the history of the great heaven primordial world. When he was at his peak, it was almost impossible to trap him. But now, Lin Feng was clearly suppressing Jihuang Xinyuan in the Xiantian game, unable to escape. Just from this battle alone, Lin Feng had already occupied a place at the top of the legends of the great heaven primordial world. Jihuang Xinyuan's expression was a little ugly at this moment. In his mind, he could not help but recall the last moments of the middle epoch. Tens of thousands of calamities in the netherworld sea engulfed the spacetime, surrounded by the light of the Haotian mirror like a shadow. There was also the indistinct figure in the netherworld sea who had fought with him for his entire life. Jihuang Xinyuan's gaze became even colder. He bared his sharp teeth and howled. The blood-red fog around him circulated and spread in all directions. While it resisted the strange air currents that were wearing down his great demon sovereign power, it also tried to invade the Xiantian game. Wherever the blood-red fog passed, the spacetime of the world formed by the Xiantian game started to shatter. Jihuang Xinyuan suddenly started to fight with his life on the line, using a method that would cause both sides to suffer. The violent blood-red fog even rushed out of the Xiantian game and fell towards Lin Feng and the Book of Collapse. A layer of blood-red light appeared on the surface of Lin Feng's original body and the Book of Collapse. The blood-red demonic light infected them, and their spiritual power and auras started to weaken. The chessboard that Jihuang Xinyuan was on also started to glow with a blood-red light. At first, it was just a small dot, but it continued to expand, as if it had been stained and was continuing to spread. At the same time, Lin Feng's suppression seal was also causing damage to Jihuang Xinyuan. The Extreme Emperor's Divine Abyss was being suppressed by Lin Feng, the Book of Annihilation, and the Xiantian Bureau. Extreme agility couldn't be used to its full potential, and the pressure it was under was even greater than Lin Feng's. The snow-white monkey fur on his body was slowly turning blood-red. It wasn't caused by the blood-red fog around him. Instead, it was caused by the Extreme Emperor's own blood essence being depleted. It was seeping out of every pore of his body. It wasn't dark red, but pure red. It made his body look even more frightening. Jihuang Xinyuan didn't seem to notice this at all. His eyes were calm and cold as he stared at the Xiantian game where he was. After temporarily infecting a portion of the Xiantian game and the Book of Collapse, he started to focus his demonic power on Lin Feng's original body. The Xiantian game and the Book of Collapse were both very mysterious, but the root of everything was still Lin Feng himself. Jihuang Xinyuan understood this, so he turned his attention to Lin Feng. I have already stepped onto the bridge of eternity. Even if I die in battle, I can return from the sea of death. At most, I might be blocked again, but my hope will not be destroyed. And are you willing to die with me? Are you like me, stepping onto the bridge of eternity? As long as this world is not destroyed, you will not die. Although it was silent, Jihuang Xinyuan's will seem to solidify and fill the void. The holy emperor of the demon race, who had once ruled over the heaven's origin world, showed no signs of retreating in the face of such a disadvantage. He directly took on the stance of fighting Lin Feng to the death. His will was so resolute that it could last for eternity. The blood stains on Lin Feng's purple robes grew thicker. Although they were separated by the Xiantian time light grotto heaven, the scene inside the grotto heaven was seen by the Taishu Taoist, Jiahuang Xuanshang and Gautama Buddha. Lin Feng and Jihuang Xinyuan were locked in a battle to the death. It naturally attracted their attention. Jiahuang Xuanshang stared at Lin Feng without any warmth in his gaze. It was as cold and cruel as Jihuang Xinyuan's. He suddenly let out a shocking dragon roar. His enormous body turned in the chaos and instantly charged towards the whirlpool where the Dead Sea and Spirit Sea gathered and sealed the heaven-punishing sword. The whirlpool formed by the collision of the Dead Sea and Spirit Sea trembled continuously. The light within it grew more and more dazzling, and the aura within it grew more and more vicious. Now that Jiahuang had charged into it, the already roaring waves in the Dead Sea and Spirit Sea grew even more ferocious. It caused the whirlpool to twist in the chaos. Chapter 1468. Jiahuang Xuanshang's huge body spun in the air and rushed towards the whirlpool where the executioner heaven was. Under the influence of his demonic energy, the Dead Sea and the Spiritual Sea surged even more violently. The Taishu Taoist and Sakyamuni Buddha frowned when they saw this. Speaking of the heaven-punishing sword, they didn't have a good impression of it at all. Their relationship with Lin Feng couldn't be said to be harmonious, and Gautama Buddha even had a rift with Lin Feng. But now that they were fighting, no matter what Lin Feng thought, they were all on the same side. The Taishu Taoist and Sakyamuni Buddha were happy to see the executioner heaven's seal interrupted, but if it was destroyed by Jiahuang Xuanshang, then it would have a huge impact on the battle. Whether it was the Taishu Taoist or Sakyamuni Buddha, killing the two Yao kings and sending them to their deaths was the best outcome. If the two Yao kings escaped, then it would be difficult to predict what would happen in the future. They wouldn't be able to control the situation. Lin Feng, the executioner heaven, the Xiantian Bureau, the Bell of Fortune, the Taishu Taoist, the Haotian Mirror, and Sakyamuni Buddha. This was the strongest lineup in the history of the human world. Even against two Yao kings, as long as they were willing to pay the price, they would be able to kill them all. The fact that Lin Feng was able to suppress and seal the Extreme Emperor's Divine Abyss, the most powerful escape technique, was already a pleasant surprise for Lord Taishu and Gautama Buddha. Compared to Jiahuang Xuanshang, Jihuang Xinyuan had a higher chance of escaping, whether it was in terms of personality or Yao Qi. Being able to trap him and force him into a fight to the death was undoubtedly an extremely difficult task. But Lin Feng and Jihuang Xinyuan were in a fight to the death. Even if Lin Feng managed to kill the Extreme King, he would still be heavily injured. Based on what the Extreme King was doing right now, it was very likely that both sides would die together. At this time, the damaged Xiantian Bureau and Book of Destruction might still be useful. Although they might not be able to use them in a short period of time, at the level of the Taishu Taoist and Gautama Buddha, there was still hope. If he fought against Jiahuang Xianshang in this sort of situation, there was still hope that he could kill him. From this point of view, watching Jiahuang Xianshang destroy that ominous sword that clearly had the power to destroy the world was not a bad choice. This sword was especially so vicious. If he wanted to destroy it, even Jiahuang Xianshang would most likely have to pay a price. This was undoubtedly more advantageous to the subsequent battles. However, the battle situation could change in an instant, and the slightest mistake could result in a completely different outcome. Lin Feng was fighting the Extreme King's Divine Abyss to the death. Although he had the upper hand in sealing the Extreme King's Divine Abyss, if he retreated, the Extreme King's Divine Abyss would retaliate, and the tables would be turned. But no one could predict what Lin Feng would do if he saw the Sky Destroyer destroyed, and if the Taishu Taoist and Gautama Buddha did not do anything. If he were to release the Extreme Emperor's Divine Abyss at the risk of being heavily injured, then abandon everything else and escape with the Xiantian Bureau and the Bell of Creation, Lord Taishu and the Ancestral Buddha would be in deep trouble. At the very least, if the two demonic emperors were injured, even if they could not win, they could leave whenever they wanted. The dragon returned to the Xianhai, and the ape returned to the spiritual mountain. That was a completely different situation. The Taishu Taoist's gaze was deep. In an instant, he had already made his decision. He gently clapped his hand in the air, and the Haotian mirror lit up the chaotic void. Billions of mirror images appeared in the void, then condensed into a single beam that shot towards Juehuang Xian Shang. Above the 9 heavens imperial court, in the 10th heaven imperial court, a mysterious and formless air current descended from above, merging with the light of the Haotian mirror. The mirror light suddenly darkened, illuminating the past and present as it landed on Juehuang Xian Shang's body. Even with Juehuang Xian Shang's strength, his body slowed slightly in the void. Gautama Buddha looked at this scene quietly. He put his palms together and activated the 3 lives karma mantra. Instantly, countless illusory lines appeared in the primal chaos. They crisscrossed and intersected with each other, making them difficult to grasp. There were countless nodes on these countless threads, each extending into the void. There was no end in sight, as if they were connecting the past and the future. The many threads of karma wrapped around Juehuang Xian Shang's body. As soon as they came into contact with the giant dragon's body, the threads of karma immediately changed. The originally illusory threads of karma suddenly condensed and took on different forms. Some were as black as ink, some were as red as blood, some were multicolored. Juehuang Xian Shang's movements became even slower as the threads of karma wrapped around him. Juehuang Xian Shang let out a long howl, and the scales on his body opened and closed. Golden light shone continuously, isolating the Haotian mirror's light. But when the golden light landed on the threads of karma, the effects weren't very obvious. There were still threads wrapped around him. As the threads of karma wrapped around him, the dragon's aura and golden light on his body began to dim. Countless images flashed in Juehuang's eyes, as if he was experiencing the lives of countless lives. The river of time unfurled in front of him, its end nowhere in sight. The past was complicated, and the future was even more difficult to see. Juehuang Xian Shang let out a shocking dragon roar. Within his sea of consciousness, the giant body of the heavenly dragon fell into the river of time and fate. He opened his mouth and sucking in large amounts of the illusory river of time and fate. As the dragon sucked in water, the river of time and fate became illusory and unreal. Juehuang Xian Shang's eyes became clearer, and the flashing images gradually disappeared. At that moment, the great 1,000 worlds, whether it was the divine land or infinite wasteland, were all shaking violently. Threads of karma seemed to appear above the heads of all living beings, intersecting with each other in the world. Juehuang Xian Shang seemed to have become the great 1,000 worlds at that moment, bearing countless threads of karma. He didn't dissolve them, he didn't distinguish them, he just carried them. Even if there were thousands of threads of karma, they were all matters of this world. They didn't escape the great 1,000 worlds. As the scales on Juehuang's body opened and closed, golden light shone nonstop. He began to absorb billions of threads of karma into his body. The threads of karma were dispelled by the majestic golden light. Gautama looked at this scene with a calm expression. Juehuang's response was within his expectations. Although Juehuang Xian had to spend more effort to deal with the 3 lives karma curse than Jihuang Xinyuan, he was a peak great demon who had reached the immortal realm. His true form was closely connected to the great 1,000 worlds, so it wasn't surprising that he had such a method. However, no matter how strong Juehuang was, he still hadn't truly transformed into the great 1,000 worlds. Accepting the threads of karma into his body was still a burden to him, and he couldn't have it as easy as Jihuang Xinyuan. A shocking dragon roar resounded through the 3 worlds as Juehuang Xian Shang resisted the 3 lives karma curse, forcibly breaking free from the Haotian mirror's light, and then he continued to pounce towards the Sky Destroyer sword. Taishu Taoist was silent for a moment. His figure turned in the void, and he entered the Haotian mirror's light. Then, he instantly appeared in front of Jua Huang Xian Shang. He was everywhere in time and space, and the wonders of being everywhere varied from person to person. Lin Feng had it, the Taishu Taoist had it, the Haotian mirror had it, Jua Huang Xian Shang and Ji Huang Xinyuan also had it. However, the area where the Spirit Sea intersected with the Dead Sea and the Great Thousand Worlds had been turned into a chaotic mess. Aside from the Haotian mirror, everyone else had lost this wonder. But at this moment, the Taishu Taoist's figure had completely merged with the Haotian mirror's light, and he instantly became like the Haotian mirror, covering all time and space. Jua Huang Xian Shang snorted coldly when he saw this. Golden light spread out from his body, as if he had opened up a realm. Wherever the golden light passed, the chaotic space and time immediately returned to normal. Taishu Taoist and the Haotian mirror's figures disappeared once again. Just like Gautama Buddha, with his cultivation realm, even if he did not have this wonder of being in all time and space, he still had the ability to suppress the other party's transformation. But with this slight delay, the Taishu Taoist formed a seal with his hand, and the Haotian mirror covered the sky. Rays of mirror light descended from all directions, squeezing the golden realm around Jua Huang Xian Shang's body into the center. Jua Huang Xian Shang moved forward, and the rays of mirror light continued to shatter. But soon, the rays of other treasured mirrors came to replace them, making it difficult for Jua Huang Xian Shang to move forward. At the same time, a huge lotus appeared under Gautama Buddha's body. Many green lotuses bloomed around the lotus, and beyond it, many saha flowers bloomed. In each saha flower there was a Zen master, a bhikkhu, a upai, a upasai, a holy monk, an arhat, a Kitagarbha, or a bodhisattva sitting inside, chanting Buddhist scriptures and chanting Buddhist names. Endless light filled the void. It was Gautama Buddha using his own power to manifest the saha world in the center. The saha world in the center pressed down on Jua Huang Xian Shang. It was as big as Mount Sumeru, and as heavy as 1,000 worlds. The eyes of the dragon progenitor were extremely cold at that moment, and at the same time, blazing anger surged. Jua Huang Xian Shang was already planning to take the attack head-on, then break through the encirclement and deal with the heaven-punishing sword first. The huge dragon tail suddenly swung in the void. The entire 1,000 worlds trembled, as if they were about to be split again. The dragon tail struck the saha world in the center, and the entire world immediately retreated in chaos. At the same time, the light from the clear sky mirror pressed down on the golden light around Jua Huang Xian Shang under the control of Tao Paragon of Taishu's power. It froze Jua Huang Xian Shang in place, and the golden light kept shattering. At that moment, Lin Feng's voice suddenly came from the Xiantian Eternal Light Grotto Heaven on Jade Capital Mountain. He chuckled and said, "Fellow Taoists, are you interested in joining my Xiantian Bureau?" Lin Feng sat in the air above the chessboard. His body was covered in red stains, and some parts of his purple robe were even torn. But his expression was normal, and there was even a hint of a smile on his lips. Chapter 1469. Lin Feng sat on the chessboard with a leisurely expression. His gaze pierced through the air and looked at Jua Huang Xian Shang, Tao Paragon Taishu, and the Buddha, who were outside the dark heaven's time-light grotto heaven. His body was covered in red stains. He had been injured by Ji Huang Xinyuan's demonic energy, and his aura was declining uncontrollably. Jua Huang Xian Shang stared coldly at Lin Feng. The Taishu Taoist and the Buddha's gazes also landed on Lin Feng. Although Lin Feng had the upper hand against Ji Huang Xinyuan, he was still in a dangerous situation. The extreme Emperor's divine abyss could drag them into mutual destruction at any moment. However, Lin Feng did not seem to care. He only watched Lin Feng silently as Jua Huang Xian Shang fought against the Taishu Taoist and the Buddha on the other side of the battlefield. He smiled faintly and pointed at the Book of Destruction in front of him. The Book of Destruction swayed slightly in the air and turned back into the bell of creation. A melodious bell chime resounded through the universe. The bell of creation flickered and turned into a huge pitch-black stone door. Its surface was covered in thousands of relief carvings. It was ancient and desolate, but it exuded a strong aura of life. The stone door opened to both sides, and a sea of primal chi poured out and landed on Lin Feng's body. In an instant, the red stains on Lin Feng's body faded at a speed visible to the naked eye. Lin Feng's clothes had already started to tear. That was the external manifestation of his nascent spirit being corroded by Jihuang Xinyuan's demonic energy. But now, as the red stains faded, the damage on Lin Feng's body also started to recover rapidly. His aura of magic also started to recover rapidly. With the support of the powerful life aura of the Gate of Creation, the damage caused by Jihuang Xinyuan quickly disappeared. Seeing this scene, Jihuang Xinyuan felt that it was a pity, but at the same time, he heaved a sigh of relief. In the end, Lin Feng didn't want to perish together with him. He was forced to be a step more conservative. Under these circumstances, he, who was originally at a disadvantage, could finally turn the situation around. The Bell of Creation had turned into the Gate of Creation, and the powerful power of rebirth had helped Lin Feng resolve the destruction caused by Jihuang Xinyuan's demonic power. However, without the destructive aura of the Book of Destruction, Lin Feng could still fight against Jihuang Xinyuan with just his own transcendence energy and the Xiantian game, but it was impossible for him to continue to suppress and seal the great demon sovereign. Jihuang Xinyuan raised his head to the sky and let out a long howl. His figure shot forward, preparing to charge out of the Xiantian Bureau. However, while Lin Feng was activating the Tai Chi Myriad Source Chi, he was also changing his hand seals. Suddenly, he wrote a mysterious rune in the void. The rune suddenly expanded and turned into tens of thousands of runes that intertwined and arranged in the void. Then, they turned into a huge and complicated array. It was the Yin and Yang Life and Death Array. The Yin and Yang Life and Death Array formed by Lin Feng's transcendence energy continued to operate in the Xiantian time-like utopia. Meanwhile, outside the Xiantian time-like utopia, the real Yin and Yang Life and Death Array, together with the Grand Imperial Palace, finally flew above Shoichi Dashin and the others and returned to Lin Feng's side. After the real array and the virtual array merged, it covered the sky and fell towards the chessboard. The Grand Imperial Palace shone brightly in it, looking majestic. Jihuang Xinyuan frowned slightly. With just this, it wasn't enough to continue to suppress and seal him. As expected, the next moment, Lin Feng waved his sleeve, and balls of light flew out from his sleeve one after another, turning into 6 huge doors. All 6 star sea doors gathered in the Xiantian time-like utopia at this moment. Jihuang Xinyuan and even Jihuang Xianshang, who was outside the Xiantian time-like utopia, watched this scene with narrowed eyes. Apart from the ancient era, the ancient star sea had always been a sacred cultivation ground for the monster race. At the same time, it was also the residence of the monster race's saint emperors. Be it Jihuang Xianshang or Jihuang Xinyuan, both of them had once occupied it. But now, all of these star sea doors had fallen into the hands of a human cultivator. The extreme emperor's divine abyss's eyes flashed with blood-red light, and he suddenly let out a wild roar. Red ripples that were almost tangible spread out in all directions, even beyond the Xiantian obelisk, and onto the 6 starry gate. In the ancient star sea, the stars were flashing, and the universe was shaking. Countless stars were shaking. On Jihuang Xinyuan's body, the stars lit up again and floated in the blood-red light. It was like a red sea of stars resonating with the real ancient star sea. At this moment, the 6-star ocean gates were glowing with red light at the same time. In the blink of an eye, Jihuang Xinyuan looked like he was about to take control of the star sea doors. Jihuang Xinyuan was a peak great monster of the immortal realm and one of the 3 strongest monster emperors in the history of the Heaven Yuan race. He was far more terrifying than anyone could imagine. The human cultivators outside the Xiantian time-like utopia felt their hearts clench when they saw this. Although they didn't like the fact that the Star Sea had fallen into Lin Feng's hands, if Jihuang Xinyuan took it back, it would be a nightmare for the human race. Even Jihuang Xianshang's cold, dignified eyes flickered slightly when he saw this. But just as Jihuang Xinyuan was about to succeed, he suddenly frowned. His blood-red eyes darkened, and the ears on both sides of his head twitched a few times. Even in such a battle of life and death, Jihuang Xinyuan didn't lose his cool. He used his all-seeing eyes and all-hearing mystiques to their limits to see even the tiniest details and find a better chance of winning. It's a trap. In the nick of time, the extreme Emperor Divine Abyss retracted its demonic energy and watched as the 6 starry gates slid past its hand. There was no need to mention the pain and conflict, regret and reluctance, anger and depression in his heart. But Jihuang Xinyuan still forced himself to calm down and rein in the horse at the edge of the cliff. Beside the Star Sea gates, Lin Feng chuckled. "You're quite alert." He didn't say anything else. He reached out and pointed, and the 6 Star Sea gates sank into the yin and yang life and death formation. At this moment, the changes of life and death, the changes of heaven and earth, the changes of eternity, the changes of yin and yang, the changes of light and darkness, and the changes of illusion and reality were all activated at the same time. The yin and yang 6 transformations were all activated to their limit. The 6 Star Sea gates each landed in a changing world. When the gates opened, a vast amount of starlight was drawn by the yin and yang life and death formation and gushed out of the gate. The Grand Imperial Palace sat at the core of the formation. The towering Immortal Palace split into 6 vast streams of light. They were like commanders that connected to the 6 Star Sea gates, causing the 6 gates to be closely connected to the entire formation. In the next moment, the yin and yang life and death formation activated, and a large amount of starlight energy in the Star Sea was continuously extracted from it. Lin Feng smiled. "Fellow Taoist may be vigilant, but to me, at most it's just me spending a bit more effort. Fellow Taoist, just obediently stay in my Xiantian bureau." Jihuang Xinyuan's eyes narrowed. As the huge formation activated, its power became greater and greater. The endless light gradually turned into endless starlight, like the real stars in the sky. The endless universe pressed down on him. Within the formation, thousands of formation patterns changed continuously. The formations theory was undergoing a drastic change. Lin Feng flicked his fingers, and streams of mana entered it. In the center of the formation, above the Grand Imperial Palace, it gradually turned into a huge Tai Chi diagram that led the formation to operate. At that moment, this grand formation could no longer be called the yin and yang life and death formation. It had been upgraded to the Tai Chi heavenly cycle stars formation. When Jihuang Xianshang, the Taishu Taoist, and the Buddha saw this Tai Chi heavenly cycle stars formation, their eyes sparkled. This formation was mysterious and unfathomable. Disregarding everything else, just the fact that it could mobilize a large amount of power from the desolate ancient Star Sea, as if it could turn the Star Sea into a formation and descend into this world, was enough to make all the top elites in Divine Origin realm look at it. It was difficult for a person to activate the power of the Star Sea and use it on a target. The power of the starlight that surged out of the Star Sea gate was limited. It was not like now, where it was absorbed into the formation by Lin Feng and used in large amounts. Although it could not directly fight the enemy, it provided endless power to the Tai Chi heavenly cycle stars formation. This was the result of Lin Feng's comprehension of the Star Sea. He combined it with the 6 Star Sea gates and his own unique divine ability, changing universe, to create this formation. It upgraded the yin and yang life and death formation into the Tai Chi heavenly cycle stars formation. The stars in the sky fell towards the chessboard and fused with the power of the Xiantian layout. With the support of Lin Feng's Tai Chi all-life Qi, it continued to suppress and seal Jihuang Xinyuan. Jihuang Xinyuan was alert and did not fall into an even more difficult situation, but the momentum of jumping out of the Xiantian layout was instantly stopped once again, and Lin Feng was forced back into the chessboard. At that moment, Jihuang Xinyuan's blood-red eyes were filled with a seriousness that had never been seen before. His demonic power tried to counterattack Lin Feng, but the effects were continuously being recovered by the life creation gate. At that moment, Jihuang Xinyuan, one of the top 3 strongest in Heaven Origin World and the ruler of Heaven Origin World, had to admit one thing no matter how unwilling he was. The opponent he was facing now was truly above him. The purple-robed young man in front of him had the ability to kill him. Even if he wanted to perish together with Lin Feng, the hope was getting smaller and smaller. Lin Feng, who had combined the Xiantian layout, the Bell of Fate, and the Tai Chi heavenly cycle stars formation, had become the strongest expert in the history of Heaven Origin World. No one could defeat him in a one-on-one fight. Even emperors of heavenly origin like the extreme emperor's divine abyss could only fight to the death in the deep abyss mountain when it was at its peak. Outside the Xiantian time cave, the extremely weak Shoichi Daishin and Tao Master Xian Yi finally escaped from the yin and yang returned to origin magical realm with the help of Taoist Master Xian Yi. They looked at the scene in front of them in shock and speechless. Even though they were at a disadvantage in the Battle of the Spirit Sea, the Haotian mirror had successfully recovered, and the plan that they had no confidence in had been carried out successfully. They had opened up the path to the Dead Sea. Taishu Temple had done their best this time. Even though the return of Jiuhuang Xian Shang and Jihuang Xinyuan made the situation look bad, even without the return of the 2 demon emperors, the people of Taishu Temple had to face a terrifying reality. In his current state, even if the Taishu Taoist returned from the Dead Sea, he would not be able to suppress Lin Feng. The appearance of the Book of Destruction had already made their hearts heavy. Now, when they saw the Xiantian layout and the Tai Chi heavenly cycle stars formation, even Taoist Master Xian Yi and the others could not help but feel helpless. Moreover, everyone looked to the side. In the whirlpool where the Dead Sea and the Spirit Sea intersected, the ferocious sword will grew stronger and stronger. Lin Feng, who was fighting against Jihuang Xinyuan, was not even in his strongest state. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.